scheduled meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the town of New Canaan. Tucker, are we on? Okay. 8:34 on Tuesday, January 18, 2022, the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the town of New Canaan. We started our budget process today for the Selectmen, and we have a bit of a agenda before we start budget. I first of all want to motion to amend the agenda to add a tree warden item. I move. Have a second.
Second here.
Discussion. All in favor? Okay. That brings us to the minutes for our last meeting on January 3rd. Any comments, corrections on the minutes?
Just one comment or add, and under Selectmen's comments, just to, this was left off, I guess. The Selectman Corbett asked that future changes to the meeting schedule be done with consultation and collaboration with the full Board of Selectmen.
I thought that was just a gratuitous comment, to be honest with you.
A gratuitous comment?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it wasn't a gratuitous comment.
You want to amend the agenda? Amend the agenda for that? Any other comments or corrections?
None here.
As I move, we approve the minutes as mentioned by Ms. Corbett. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Public comments. This is a hybrid meeting. Anybody on from the?
Not yet, but we may have some presenters.
So it's an in-person meeting, but hybrid for any presenters who?
Russ Kimes wasn't sure if he was gonna have to come.
Okay, but it's an in-person meeting with the possibility of people joining us for presentations, and therefore members of the public are welcome to provide comments to the Board of Selectmen on agenda topics scheduled for review and or vote. Comments submitted electronically should be sent to the email address bosdistribution@mcannasct.gov. And if we receive any, Tucker will read them in the course of the meeting before the meeting's over. That being the case, we next go to COVID testing, an agreement with Progressive Diagnostics, which I signed on an emergency basis because we had to replace our testing laboratory. Tomorrow, Progressive starts. Progressive is a firm based in Trumbull, or I think Trumbull, and they have about 5 or 6 locations. And Jen met with them yesterday, and they start tomorrow with 100 capacity on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We're going to go from 120 to 300 PCR tests a week if they're needed. So, and we had to replace SEMA 4 because Waveney Care Center was using SEMA 4, and as of I think now, SEMA 4 withdrew from the business. And any questions about this contract?
Just a comment, I actually used them in Wilton last week and they were terrific. So they were very, they handled the process very easily. The results came back within, I think it was about 8 hours.
Yeah, the key is that we will be doing Monday, Wednesday, or Friday mornings, and as long as we have them, we will deliver the samples to either Norwalk or Wilton, and they will pretty much be guaranteed to be back the same day. The contract actually says up to 48 hours, but the problem we have with SEMA 4 was they were beginning to get 3 and 4 or 5 days, which is not surprising perhaps when you're going out of the business. But so I also paid for Progressive and didn't use it, but they don't give you refunds when you sign up for tests anyway. But actually, I should make an important announcement. We're no longer going to require credit cards if the individual insurance doesn't pay, which most of the time the insurance companies are paying. The Progressive will submit it for federal fund reimbursement directly and not involve the town in collecting. So we will have no cost to the individual and no cost to the town, other than the fees we're paying Progressive for the service of.
Have those changed at all in terms of?
This is actually much lower than what we have with Waveney, so it's a better deal. All these tests are being paid for by federal dollars anyway, one way or the other, unless the insurance companies, for the most part. I've only heard of a couple of insurance companies that decline to pay for COVID-19 tests, and so I did sign the agreement already on an emergency basis, but I would ask that you. What's the word?
Perfect.
Ratify is the word. The agreement with Progressive Diagnostics tablets. Do I have a second? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. New police vehicles. We have our Captain Walsh and Deputy Chief. Okay. Morning, Andrew.
Good morning, how are you?
Good.
First on our list of items is we're asking for approval to purchase 2 police vehicles from our approved capital for a total of $69,416. And that is from Tasker Ford, and that's at the state contract price. We've used the vendor before and they're pretty reliable. They're going to offer us $500 per vehicle for 2 trade-ins, a 2009 Chevy Expedition and a 2008 Ford Explorer.
Are those our oldest vehicles? The 2008,
They are
2009?
not the oldest, but they are not very reliable at the moment and they have some issues. There's some rust issues on the Chevy Expedition. It's rotting out, and there's a motor and transmission problem with the Ford Explorer. So what we do is we speak to the town mechanics when we're up for trade-ins, and I ask them, you know, in your professional estimation, what's the best vehicles for us to get rid of to save money on repairs? And those are the 2 that they recommended at this time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Questions, Nick?
What's the mileage on these, Andrew?
On those 2 that are being traded in,
Yeah.
I only have I have October numbers. That's the last time we updated the mileage on it. So it's going to be up about, you know, probably 10,000 from there, or 5,000 from there, maybe. 2009 Expedition is over 90,000 on the Expedition, and the Explorer is about the same, about 90,000.
Okay.
So police vehicles usually let them go at 60. So,
Oh, really?
Since they're an emergency response vehicle, like first responder, we would like to get rid of it at 60, so
Mm.
it's well past their time.
There's in the support fleet now.
Good.
I have no questions. Any further questions? I move we approve the request from the police department to purchase 2 new police vehicles as described in the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye, that's unanimous. And then
Thank you.
police dash and body cameras.
Well, first I have the police vehicle equipment purchase from Specialty Warning Systems.
It's all included. Cancer.
That's all included?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So our last item is dash and body worn cameras. So we're looking to come to an agreement with a company named Telrepco, and we use them for our MDTs, which is our mobile data terminals, the computers in the cars, and our e-tickets, machines like that. So they're a reliable vendor, and they provide on-service, on-premise servicing. So we're looking to purchase Panasonic's model of dash cams and body cameras. They're very robust. The body cameras can be, the state police use them, and they've said that they've been run over by vehicles and they still work after. So they're pretty robust. In accordance with the act concerning police accountability within the state of Connecticut, we're mandated to make this purchase. So we have to provide body cameras for each officer. Currently, we only have a small pool of body cameras, and they constantly break and are out of service. So to keep up with the act, we have to purchase our own body cameras. And we also need to get our marked patrol vehicles to have in-dash cameras as well. So this is all in accordance with that. So we looked around, shopped around a little bit, and this is the best vendor we could find with the best local service and reliability with the state of police, state of Connecticut Police Department and Wilton as well, use them locally, and they're very happy with them. So we're looking to purchase those. The total right now is $169,974.50 through that vendor. And that's just the beginning of the project. You will see us here again for the infrastructure of the project. And also we're going to need to make more purchases for dash cameras with a minimum of 5 next year as well, when that'll be presented for the budget this year. The good news is, at last I checked with the state of Connecticut, there's still some grant money left over. So part of this purchase hopefully will be put in for a reimbursement of up to 30%. So we're out of what's eligible within the purchase, we'll probably be looking in the area of $30,000 in reimbursement, as long as we get it in time.
Questions?
So what's the additional spend?
So
Next year?
the infrastructure for
What's
yeah,
the
we're
finance?
working with the town IT,
Right.
getting an idea of what kind of server we're going to need to have to support it. Different items on that end. I'm not a professional, that's their professional expertise. I've been working with Tim Malley in IT on that, and he has a strong handle on it. And we're looking at different options for storage, whether it's on-site storage and having our own server, or if we're going to go into the cloud-based area. The prices have been fluctuating. We were looking at putting it all together for purchase today, but the quotes we got last month were $55,000 roughly, and then we repriced them the other day, and Tim Malley told me that it was around $70,000. So the chip, I don't know if it's a chip shortages, it's the same kind of a issue that everyone's having now with purchases, but with the fluctuating prices, we figured we'd take a step back and take a closer look at it to make a more responsible purchase.
Okay.
So if you could just give us a kind of a timing. So this equipment, I noted that it was the phase one. So this equipment will come in
Yes, in a
And
couple
then
months, hopefully.
in a couple of months. Is that what it takes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the additional 70,000 for the implementation, is that going to be in this budget year or for
Yes.
next?
It would be in this budget year.
This budget year, okay.
Hopefully offset by the reimbursement from the state
Right.
for the purchases of the dash cams and the body
Right.
cams.
So you hope to be up and running with this equipment by
We
What?
need to be by July
July?
per law,
Okay.
yeah, for state
Okay.
law.
Was this in the budget?
Yes, it was bonded capital. We had
Was?
the bonded
Okay.
capital we have is $226,000.
Okay, good.
Any questions?
Further questions? I have no questions. I move we approve the request from the police department to enter into a contract with Telrep Co.
Tell Repco, yes.
for 50 body worn cameras with related accessories and 10 in-car dashboard cameras with related accessories for a total of $169,974.50 as described by Captain Walsh. Do I have a second?
Second here.
Nick seconds for the discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Speaking of cameras, where are we with respect to the camera situation in town and Waveney and elsewhere?
I think that's in process. I'm sure the deputy chief could speak to that. He's working on that.
He's
closely
coming
as
up.
well.
What papers?
Well, virtual paper. The cameras at Waveney work. Let's just put that out there. They are working.
Good.
They are cameras and they take pictures of a static location and they assist us, but they don't solve every crime. So they are working. Our investigators have reviewed them. They didn't provide any evidentiary value to any break-ins over the past week. We are looking to improve them and add to them, but without getting into any specific details of the current ongoing investigation and everything. But the cameras are working. We have reviewed them and they didn't provide any additional information. That
Yeah, I saw some still shots, which, looked pretty clear. Why weren't we able to use, you talk about evidentiary value, we just didn't have enough.
We didn't have a clear suspect vehicle to look for. So
Right.
of all the cars that came in and out of Whitney Park during the time frame, none of them were clearly identified as the suspect vehicle. So we didn't have anything to go on to identify.
You just had too many cars to
Too many cars.
to try and figure out who was the bad guy or
These criminal groups, they use rental cars anyway. So they blend into the area that they're going into. So it's not a vehicle that looks out of place for any reason or anything like that. It just blends in. So,
So when they rent these cars, are they renting them in Connecticut or are they renting them?
usually these are criminal syndicates that work the whole East Coast and they come up and down and then they just go from town to town and do these when we got hit last week in Greenwich and
Right.
Marianne also got hit as well as I'm sure they.
Is it the same gang or is it?
It's the same group,
Syndicate.
same syndicate. So they'll send a crew out that'll go and break into several cars, steal whatever is available. Then they'll hand that stuff off to the next group within their syndicate that will take the identification and create false IDs and go cash fraudulent checks. And then, so there's multiple layers to the organization, if you will, that, so they have one cell that just goes out and breaks into cars, and they'll go do that. And if they get caught, they don't know anything further up the chain in the group than what their specific job is, and they'll just move up the East Coast and back down again. So, we had one from last year. They were renting cars in Florida and starting just moving up the East Coast. So it's very, very challenging to identify who it is and to capture them and arrest it.
Yeah, and Chief, is it identity theft? Is that the primary?
Primarily what they try to do, most people, as soon as your credit cards are stolen, you cancel your credit cards, and then there's no fraudulent charges usually. They'll take whatever cash is there and obviously take that, but the primary goal, I think, is for identity theft is usually what they're using it for.
And are we working with Greenwich and Darien and other towns?
Investigators work.
Right.
They have a whole regional team, and they get together weekly and they share information. And sometimes we can capture them. Sometimes we can identify the groups or the cars or who's renting the cars. But usually they're just low level people within the bigger crime syndicate. So it does take a considerable amount of work, and our investigators are doing a great job with it and are chasing down any leads that they can get and looking for any similar cars. But like I said, they trade out cars and they use different cars, and none of them belong to anybody that's involved with it. It's usually just rental cars.
Right. And with respect to cameras elsewhere, and I don't think we need to go into emergency executive session to discuss, but there is a plan to roll out.
We're working closely with our IT department to enhance the cameras that we have. Like I said, the cameras are working, but we always want to be on the provide the best level of security that we can, and add cameras to additional locations and enhance the cameras that we have. But yeah, we're working with.
And we'll kind of oversight / storage of the camera, what we get on the cameras. Will that reside with PD or will it reside with IT?
So part of the bigger project that we did with the Milestone software allows us to add multiple cameras and store all of this data, and we have it stored within the town. We have access to it at the PD. Yes. Yeah.
Good. And hopefully we'll get a new PD so you can
That'd be great.
have a more enjoyable viewing.
So I'm going
experience.
to join the police commission meeting tomorrow night in executive session. And then I plan, when we have our police department budget presentation, I plan to go into executive session to discuss cameras so the Board of Finance can be prepared to do the same. So thank you, Deputy
had
Chief. Yeah.
One question. So the additional cameras, are they part of this year's budget or are they proposed for next
I
year?
believe I have to work with Chris Kaiser. I know Chris Kaiser ordered some new ones to enhance the ones that were there. And I just talked to him last week about adding some. So I think he has money in the budget. If
Okay.
not, we'll find money in our budget this year. If not, we'll definitely add it to next year.
Okay.
Money is not the issue.
Right.
Priority.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, it's not an issue. We need to do whatever we can to stop this stuff.
Where were we? That wasn't on the agenda.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Joe. Number 6 is salt shed feasibility study.
Good morning. Currently, the highway department stores salt in an old incinerator building. It is not of the ideal size for the storage, and it's tough to navigate with the salt trucks and the plow trucks. It is desired to construct a salt shed on top of the capped landfill. We would like to hire Ty and Bond to determine if it's technically feasible, identify the permit requirements, and provide an opinion of cost for the project. The study will also inform the town on the general requirements for any structure we desire to place on the capped landfill. So hopefully it'll give us enough detail so that we can, whenever there's a desire to put anything on the capped landfill, we'll have the data know what we need to do. So we recommend that we contract be awarded to tie and bond for $48,400 plus $1,600 contingency, totaling $50,000 for the feasibility study for the salt shed. And the funding is currently available.
Funny what?
And the funding is currently available.
In the budget for,
We have $50,000 to study the salt shed.
is that for the master plan of the highway and transfer station property, or is?
No, this is just the salt shed area itself. It kind of encompasses that as well, but
Where do we stand on the master plan? I thought we had money for that.
no, we have money budgeted for this. We have money budgeted for a master plan. That's a request from the Conservation Commission.
What's the expected spend on this? I know Ty and Bond is gonna let us know.
Right there.
Are we
so
taking really
we don't have an actual, we have a placeholder right now of 1.3 million,
1.3 million?
but the data needs to be gathered and a full budget opinion of cost needs to be created to nail that down.
What's the size of this?
3,000 tons. So it allow us, we've had problems or procuring salt, like even for this year, I understand they're having issues with deliveries of salt, not big ones. But we'd like to be able to store enough salt so that we never have to worry about not being able to get it when there's like
Right,
a year like this year.
right.
So the proposed location is sort of down the hill from the, where the current salt shed is. You kind of travel down and it's,
Yeah,
Is it
so
right-
they're gonna identify the ideal location, but
Okay.
that is, in our opinion, was an area that worked.
Right.
So.
Okay.
That's the primary area.
Seems like a lot of money for a study.
Yeah,
that's
what I'm
saying.
Well, they'll also, there's a lot, as far as, there's a closure permit for the landfill. So they have to meet with DEEP and find out exactly what's required for DEEP in accordance with our permitting. So there's a lot of permitting that's required. And then to identify with the floodplain, the wetlands, the stormwater management. And then there's engineering considerations for building on top of a landfill. And then there's a conceptual layout. And then lastly, the opinion of cost. So we're throwing a lot of
what's the
Scope.
time frame?
at them.
What's the expected time frame?
So this will be a 24 project.
Right, but I mean, just for them to
this-
come back
for
with
this
their,
scope, It'll be about 3 months, 4 months.
Could we just do the cost estimate first, regardless of location, and then, because how are we gonna get this in the budget for April?
We're not. We're looking at.
24?
Yeah,
24 budget.
yeah. I imagine I won't be looking at it this year. We were originally looking, but no. But it's a little heavy this year for that. And I think that this is gonna take, after the study for 3-4 months, we're still gonna have to take a look at it again. We're building on a liner of a capped landfill next to a sewer treatment plant, right? So we've got 2 sets of DEP people looking at it. We got a lot of moving parts that we've got to take care of.
Have we considered alternative locations?
And I just drive my guys out to come back. You never want to take that low, right?
Well, all right. Any questions further?
No.
You want to approve this? I move we approve a request from Public Works to enter into contract with Ty and Bond for $50,000, which includes a contingency to prepare a feasibility study report for the salt shed. Second,
second?
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. Sidewalk repairs. Tiger?
Good morning. We touched on this last meeting, as far as this was work that was in conjunction with Aquarian Water, their water main work. Their contractor was done all the tie-ins to every single building. They actually disrupted our brick and repaved it with asphalt temporarily. Aquarian asked us to get a price from our contractor, who had already worked with them prior on another job. on Brinkerhoff, Mortimer, and Lockwood, doing the same thing, fixing the sidewalk that they had damaged. So Peter Lonnie came in with a $14,300 price. Aquarian said yes, that they would reimburse us for it. And we went ahead on an emergency basis from Kevin to get it done, hopefully before, during that crazy season. And since we were getting a lot of complaints from the store owners of why do I have these piled bricks? We didn't want them there in case it snowed or, someone wants to pick up an errant brick and throw it into the street, what have you, tripping hazard. So they went forward and did the work. And we're just looking for approval on the back end of the contract itself. Aquarian will provide us with a check for the $14,300 and then we'll pay the contractor.
The main thing that is that Aquarian's paying for this, so
Yes.
with someone we prefer rather than having their guys who tend to be unreliable in some ways.
They're not masons and they don't do our brick
Yeah.
sidewalks. It was a much better fit.
Right.
And Aquarian understood that.
Any questions?
None here.
I move to approve the request from Public Works to enter into a contract with Peter Lonnie for $14,300 to repair the screwed up sidewalks we have on Main Street, and Aquarian Water Company will pay.
Lack of a better way to put it, yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aquarian.
Can I do the trees now or?
Sure.
This was our first bid of 2022 for January 14. We went out to our normal set of 6 companies for bids. We apologize that it came in late, but it came in Friday. And we appreciate you adding it. We only got one bid back, but I spoke to the tree warden and he said it's very valid. It's actually a very good price. It's from Olmsted. They normally win the majority of our bids. So it stands to reason that they would win this for $18,875. It's for 8 separate locations in town. And we recommend going forward with Olmsted for these tree removal and pruning.
Questions for Tiger?
This is the first time I think we've only seen.
It's the
one.
first time we've only had one. Yeah.
Right.
So I actually questioned Bob and Christie. It said, did we send it out to everybody? Yes. Was there confusion? No. Just, I think it might've been the time of year. Bob also said that everybody's very, very busy. So
Really?
it just might be that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Question? Nick?
None here.
I move to approve the request from the tree warden to enter into a contract with Olmsted Tree and Shrub Care for $18,875 to remove, prune, and stump removal of various trees in town as specified in the memo that Tiger presented to us. Do I have a second?
Second?
For the discussion? All in favor?
Thank you.
Unanimous. Thank you, Tiger. Now we get to some appointments and reappointments. We're almost done with this round for December and first item is Planning and Zoning Commission. John Engel, but we didn't put John Engel's bio on the tablets because I think everyone knows John, former chairman of the town council, also served 7 years, I believe, on the zoning board of appeals.
Mhm.
And so John is going to take the place of a member who did not seek reappointment, and I therefore want to move that we appoint John Engel to be a regular member for a 3-year term ending December 1, 2024. Do you want to do these all together, or do you want to let's do the rest of P and Z? Also, reappointment of Dan Radman and John Chris as regular members for 3-year terms ending December 1, 2024. And reappointment of Chris Herring and James Bash as alternate members for 2-year terms ending December 1, 2023. Any questions about the Planning and Zoning Commission appointments? Why don't we do them sequentially? I move we make those appointments to Planning and Zoning as I just described. Second?
Second here.
Further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Parking Commission, appointment of Nancy Bemis and Marley Thackeray for a 3-year term ending December 1, 2024. Nancy Bemis, I forget whose spot she's taking. Keith Ritchie,
Mhm. Yeah.
and Marley Thackeray is an unaffiliated voter who is taking the place of Peter Ogilvy. And I move we approve those appointments for terms ending, 3-year terms ending December 1, 2024.
So just a comment, being new appointments here, I reached out to both of them, both I know well, and very excited about the opportunity to serve on the Parking Commission. They're very capable. They're already great volunteers to our town. So I think they're going to be great appointments.
Did I already move this?
You did.
You do.
I'll second.
Second, further discussion? What, all in favor?
Hi.
That's unanimous. Historic District Commission, reappointment of Dick Rose, Marty I can't remember Marty's name. Skrlunas and Carl Rothbart as regular members for 4-year terms ending November 15th, 2025, and reappointment of Pamela Brandon as an alternate member for a 4-year term ending November 15th, 2025. Any questions or I moved these reappointments. Second,
Second here.
Nick seconds for the discussion. All in favor? That's unanimous. That brings us to dissolution of subcommittees. Some of them are obvious, like the Fields Committee, which had never been disbanded but completed its work. We decided to terminate the Technology Advisory Committee. They've done a lot of great work since they were originally formed, but the need for advice in that area, the members of that committee are still available to consult with. And Paul Payne in particular, who helps us with our internal website monthly meetings. SAC School Building Committee had completed their work on the boiler room. And the Selectmen's Advisory Committee, I think, has served its purpose and puts quite a burden on Tiger and his staff and me. And I think we also found that the outside members really didn't find it productive. It was sort of more of a reporting than a seeking advice. And we may, want to do an internal committee with the Board of Education to make sure we're coordinating on important projects that involve both the Board of Education and the town. And then finally, the Waveney House Renovation Committee. They really had done all their work on prescribing the requirements for the ADA work on the second floor with the bathrooms and also the elevator. Now it's implementation for public works. And if we do another phase of Waveney House renovations, which could involve, I won't get into that right now, but if we do another phase, we perhaps will stand up another committee. But I also want to note that we have the Parks and Recreation Commission, which has a Waveney House committee, and we perhaps ought to use them more. So any questions about dissolution of these committees?
None here.
It's all great committees that served great purpose.
Yeah.
And we thank those who served.
So I move we dissolve those committees as I noted and as are set forth in the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Contracts under 10,000. I didn't actually take a look to see what's there. Any questions about what's on the tablets? No? Are we, do we, so we've reviewed those legal fees? I would know on the legal fees, we have a big chunk of money that's been dedicated to the 220 Elm Street project. That's all going to be rolled into the bonded acquisition of that building. And so we'll move that money out of the general fund, out of having been paid for by the general fund to get reimbursed out of the capital. And so it looks like we're heading for going over legal expense budget, but we're really not. That was an extraordinary item that will be paid for with other funds.
So that's the 44,000.
There's probably another 10,000 this month alone. It's been a complicated transaction to kind of minimize the building. And but we should close next week with our investors, and happy to get that darn project done. Are we approving legal fees or do we just review?
Yeah.
Tax overpayments, which is just,
Legal fees.
we just did legal fees.
We do approve those.
Sorry, I was in there.
Are we approving legal fees?
Yeah.
I move we approve the legal fees on the tablets.
Second now.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Tax overpayments, wasn't much on there. I move we approve the refunds of the motor vehicles, 17 of them, on the tablets.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor? Tax overpayments are, that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. I want to go back and I should have started the meeting with this. I'm very, very happy today to have Ann Kelly Lentz joining us as our new CFO. And as we go into budget, she's going to be an observer for since Josh is very, very ably carried us over from December and January, and he's our budget manager now. But I welcome Ann, and we're thrilled to have you. And if you haven't met Ann yet,
You will.
we'll be meeting shortly. So thank you very much for joining us. And Josh, do you want to come up and start the process? How are we budgeting our time today here, Tucker? But what's our schedule? I mean,
Until 12.
Starting, this will go until 9:15, and then we'll start with Public Works, 9:15 to 10. 10:45, EMS, OEM for 10:45 to 11.
good luck.
Make it work.
Great. Okay, Josh, you
right.
you have the floor.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the process thus far that we've had, starting in November when we.
Josh, why don't you pull the mic? Does it matter, Tucker, whether he's talking into that mic or this mic?
Take it over here.
Sure. So starting in November when we met with the Board of Finance to get some guidance where we're trying to plan our path forward into the FY23 budget. Then we take that guidance and send out requests to the departments in November, looking for their operating and capital budgets. We take those numbers from HR, numbers from actuaries, and also contractual numbers, and kind of compile them to the first draft of the budget, which then gets reviewed by myself, the first Selectmen, Cheryl and Tucker, and Lunda, of course. And we, that team, then meet individually with each department and kind of try to gain an understanding of the increases and decreases in various line items and going line by line and project by project for capital projects and kind of try to hone that to a second draft. That then gets compiled into the packets that you have on your tablets. That you will have starting kind of with a summary and then followed by department line by line, their line items. Also included are kind of the department narratives with their performance metrics, which kind of go over a bit of a detail of the accomplishments of the last year and their expected accomplishments for next year, and as well as the capital projects and their details and lifespans and so on. Included in that is also the Board of Education budgets. As they haven't actually approved their budget yet, it's kind of just a preliminary budget, which will be updated for, I believe, the meeting on the 25th, which will be after they approve it. Also in there is kind of the updated grand list numbers, which will obviously get updated over time. And of course, the packet is kind of like a living document. So
I'm not sure what the grand list I think is set now for this budget. Didn't
I'm not sure if there's a board of assessors that.
oh, it could go down
Go
based
down.
upon the March meetings. Okay. Not up, not likely to go up. Right.
Right.
But I think SEBI came in with a 1.7% increase rather
Yeah,
than the
it was
1% we had.
closer to 1.8, yeah.
1.8 rather than, so that was good news, but not enough to win the day.
So with that, the packet is, and the budget itself is a living document. So, you know, as we go through these meetings, it'll obviously change and we'll hone it to something that gets adopted in April, May.
And we've had our department managers meetings with me, and we've had we have liaison meetings with the Board of Finance the next couple weeks, and So we got very much a work in progress. Every, numbers still pop up and are we sure about this number or that number? But by the time we end our meetings, we need to approve a Board of Selectmen recommended budget. So with that introduction, thank you, Josh. I guess
Just one question on the budget guidance from the Board of Finance. Usually they publish something. Did they this year?
they're not going to do that this year. They
They're not,
they
okay.
they have a model that they play with. And they've decided really, they had some conversations in October and November about the environment and that kind of stuff. But we all know that it's going to be a tough year because of inflation and because of the COVID impact on the numbers last year makes it so hard to get a normalized comparison for where we are, especially on the Board of Ed side. So, but it's going to be a difficult year to try to keep both the mill rate from increasing and the amount we have to raise from taxation from increasing. So we got our
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and I would also like to make one other remark about Ann. Ann came from Wilton, and about Linda. Linda has been very helpful to us in this transition. He still has been helping us on Friday afternoons and weekends to get us to where we are. I really appreciate that. And he'll be finishing up next week. And Ann has a bit of transition work to do with Wilton. We've agreed to that with Wilton. It's kind of a necessary thing when we go through these transitions, but I really appreciate everything Linda has done in particular. And so, okay.
Works.
When technology works. Yeah.
Want to introduce your guys
Sure, I can do that. The
since they're all here?
since they're all here, well, we are a cohesive unit, and I'd like them to hear everything that has to be said, and and then they do have valid commentary on other portions of other departments as to how we're running and what we're doing. So I think it's always a good thing to have everybody in the loop, so to speak. So in the pink is Bill Ostman. He's our superintendent of town buildings. The gentleman with the white mustache, that's Jim Rogers. He's our superintendent of the wastewater treatment plant. Sitting next to him is Don Smith. He's our superintendent of solid waste, our transfer station. Directly behind him is John Howe, our superintendent of parks. And to John's right is Todd Decline, our assistant director, our assistant superintendent. In the front row is Joe Zagorinsky, our senior engineer. Next to him is our capable town engineer. We're thankful that we actually made a great hire, Maria Coplet. Behind him is Mo Zachary, our superintendent of highways. Mo, how long you been here? 41 years. 41 years. Jim, how long you been here? There it is. And then the way back is Dan Bakikio on the right and Lou Boise. Those are Moses' right-hand man. Danny's our dispatcher. He handles all the crews as they manage through snowstorms. And then Lou is, we're training Lou for possible succession to Moses' job. So that's why he's here. So that gives you.
That was useful for Ann, at least. I want to have Ann, everybody knows all the guys, but Ann in particular has to begin to know all the faces, and so. And otherwise, Tucker and Cheryl and Bob Mantilia with our special projects team. So everybody knows everybody now.
Well, thank you very much. That was excellent. So thank you. We're here to present our 23 budget. First read. This is us, Department of Public Works. We are 58 strong, 55 full-time employees, 3 part-time employees, 2 in the Parks Department, 1 of which we'd like to move to full-time, and our tree warden is part-time. So Bob Haran. So this kind of gives you a list. We're 58 strong over 8 separate divisions. The highway has 2 divisions underneath the road maintenance and fleet. And then our waste management is sewer and transfer, both amply covered by Jim and Don. So without further ado, I'll get into the numbers, and I will be perfectly honest with you, I've been freaking out for 4 days. So our operating budget this year stands at $11.619 million. It's up 720,000 or 6.61% over last year. I don't know how else to say it, but that's where we're at. When I took into consideration every request we get from a resident, every complaint that we get, the needs and wants and wishes of our clientele, which are the residents at large, the point of where we're at right now as far as inflation, I can't keep it at our normal 2%. I've been doing it since 2007, and this year it's just the genie's out of the bottle. We can't hold it down any longer. So we'll go through each department. We'll show you exactly where the numbers are and why they changed, or why we're feeling that we need to get to the number that's listed, and then we can go from there. And if we need to cut priorities, we'll cut priorities. But that's where we stand at present. This does include the sewer department as always, but sewer is a separate fund, but we roll them into this, good or bad. Sewer's at 332, probably one of our best numbers on the board. So let me roll forward and we'll talk each one. But when I scaled out our departments on this graph from fiscal 10 to 23, you can see the majority of them from 10 to 23 are flat. All the bottom ones are flat. Even somewhat in the middle, sewer has a moderate growth. The only one is that sees a market growth is town buildings, but in Bill's defense, we took over and then we started to grow the program, right? So we started to grow the program, add certain buildings, add certain maintenance aspects to them. So therefore we see an added increase in their funding. But if I overlay inflation, the rate of inflation for that time frame, you can see that if I just lay it over the highway department and kind of give you the highway department numbers for the 2 times, highway started in 10 at 2.65 million, but an inflation rate, if I had started at 2.5 million back in fiscal 7, it would have been 2.58 million. And then I run that inflation rate out, they actually transpose themselves, they flip, whereby now inflation is 3.55 million, that same budget. And the highway would be a 3.36. So while the highway gained 700,000, inflation went up by $1 million, right? So we're $300,000 light, if you want to look at it from that standpoint. So I kind of applied that metric through to every single department, and some of them you can see that it doesn't necessarily matter. Transfer station, we're barely getting to the point where transfer station is here. We're barely getting to the point where we're cresting our high of fiscal 9, fiscal 10. We haven't even reached that marker yet. So things like that. So we did take a look at it. And with this in mind, like this kind of gave me a little bit, this allowed me to sleep last night. How about that? Other than that, was about it. So let's move forward to, and then I looked at just kind of a different.
I missed that. What allowed you to sleep last night?
The fact that the inflation rate showed that actually I was less than the inflation rate. That's about all I needed. I needed something to be able to say it's actually good, right? So, but then I looked at this, and this is a Big Mac price versus the CPI adjusted. The CPI adjusted is the green, and a Big Mac is actually now $5, $5.50. And that kind of helped me out as well. So if you took the adjusted CPI, it'd be around 250, but a Big Mac today is at 567. So it gives you what we're seeing out in the real world as far as when we go for supplies, when we go for materials, when we go to hire a contractor, what have you, what they're the pressures that they're under at present. So
could you summarize like 2 or 3 or 4 drivers besides inflation on the
our materials are up. Market, just John.
That's inflation too, though. So
that's inflation based. Yeah. We saw the depression. You had a high at one point in time. Then we went into recession, and construction follows that, right? So we were in that low for a while, and then we saw that this norm was going to come back. And just this past year, we started seeing where our paving numbers came up, whereby the contractor was able to probably save money someplace else to make his bid relevant, or worthy. He was able to save it on his milling or his reclaiming or certain other items that were low, but the paving was still high. Now we're seeing everything come up because the labor costs are coming back up again. Material costs are coming up. Just the price of machinery. One price for one piece of John's machinery was $90,000 2 years ago. It's 137 or 127,000 this year. It's a $37,000 change in just a year or two. And that's because of diesel emissions and certain prices of steel, things of that nature. Just not to quote John, but his seed is up 20%, fertilizer is up 70%, 17%. So you see those drivers. 40, sorry, that's right, 40%. So I knew once I said 20, I knew it was wrong. Sorry. But you see those drivers and you realize exactly what the pressures that we're under to try to just stay current, not necessarily even add any new programs, just stay current with what our current workload is. And then in there also is the fact that we were given some additional responsibilities. Dunning Stadium, for example, we were given Dunning Stadium. We didn't have Dunning Stadium. We had that. We're starting to take some of the responsibilities or the budgetary numbers that were underneath recreation that should have always been under parks. Last year, we took some. This year, we're taking more, right? So we took basically all the capital and then some of the responsibilities around Waveney House and things of that nature that had added dollars to the Parks Department budget. So that gives us our look.
Hey, Tucker, can we get a digital version of this?
I can, yes, I
Okay.
can send it. I apologize. I
That's
like to have it so that you see it first and then I give it,
I
because
just
if not,
can't- it's
everyone's
hard to
heads down.
see. That's all.
Sorry.
So
The,
the 6.6% was it?
6.61.
6.1, that's budget to budget or budget to actual?
That's my budget to budget.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't go budget to revised.
Right.
Josh's numbers are budget to revised. I went budget to budget only because that's the way we've always done it. So I wanted to try to stay consistent.
And your
across the
numbers
board.
really aren't affected by COVID as far as like the Board of Ed really gets whacked around because of
Not
reduced.
now. No,
Right.
last year we were when we were putting in all the mitigation measures.
Right.
Now we do have staffing measures, but we don't have a minimum shift level, right? So thankfully, we haven't had a problem whereby we've needed to call in additional forces because our men are down and we needed to call in additional forces to help us. We're calling in additional forces because of the nature of the snowstorm. If we were going to normally in 2018, we would have done it, we do it now. COVID wasn't a part of that aspect, so no. And then so what I did was I did a breakdown of where we stand overall as a budget, and our salary line is 49.4%, or our salary lines are 49.4% of our overall budget. I did the same look back in 21, and it's actually a negative 3% change. So in 21, we were actually 52% of our budget. Now we're not. And then if you look at exact things that I was talking about, so our outside contractors are up 1.3%. Our supplies are up 3.3%. So across the board, fiscal to fiscal, 21 to 23, we see in this change exactly what's happening. Our labor costs is actually lesser of an amount now, and our supplies and outside contractors are a larger portion thereof. So we are feeling the pressure. We are feeling the drivers. Will we continue to work towards whatever number you give us? Yes, we'll work towards whatever number you give us. But this is what we see on the horizon at present from what we're being asked to do, the residential requests that we're getting, the complaints that we get, and the things that we see out there with virtually no new programs other than the ones I mentioned to, parks.
And when you come to Dunning and a couple items that were added, and those, if you normalize those, how much do those add up to?
Not that much, but it does still add, like, so we have $450,000 for lights at Dunning Stadium. We have an additional set of maintenance, $12,500.
Well, that's a capital item.
That's capital.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
probably, John, in yours, what was it for maintenance at Dunning? There was some additional money in there for that. And then there was an additional 24,000 for Waveney House that you theoretically could take out of recreation because we've carried it over to us. So it's necessarily a net change of 0, but for us, it's actually an add of 24,000. And for us, every 100,000 is a quarter point,
Right.
right? Because our budget's at like 10 million. So it's a quarter point for every 25,000. So that matters. Every single time I add 25K, it matters. It's a quarter point. It's market for us, at least. But we can go through, as we get to those items, we can kind of give you a little bit more look as to where we are overall. But so let me roll through where we are. In administration, it's Christy and myself. We're seeing a 2.8% change. And to be quite honest with you, last year I had our overtime number for her at $1,000 way too low for when she has to stay late and things she has to do. And our average is around $8,000. So last year we were understated at $8,000. This is just a correction thereof. So it winds up driving it. Do you have any questions on? No? Okay. Engineering, it's a $7,000 change, just under 2%. And this is an increase in one salary line item. that we had discussed prior. We feel that one of our members, I did a look at all of our supervisory staff and see exactly where we are across the board and to towns, neighboring towns, things of that nature. And one of our staff is low, and I'd like to bump him by about $5,000 to make up that difference. He's been an excellent employee, he's done a great job. So I'd like to see that change.
Tiger, what's the red line again with the?
Red line is inflation,
just
but that's normalized at $1 million. So that kind of gives you the look if it was $1 million budget.
Okay.
In fiscal 7 and where it would be. So the
Okay.
Just to
Sure.
clarify on the salaries for all of the accounts, so some of them show increases, some of them are flat to previous years. Is that?
supervisory staff are flat across the board because we haven't been given what we're going to get.
Okay,
Some have, like Christie's in Town Hall Union, so she already knows what her rate is going to be.
check.
So that's already given. The highway department in our parks department, well, all of our crews are right now, with it probably next month, they'll be bringing their agreement to the town council for approval.
Right.
They're right now ratifying on their end. There's a change, they'll get it's 2.352525 is the way that the numbers roll, and those numbers will get reflected, as well as there's some salary changes in there as well to try to differentiate what some of our crews are doing, crew leader, things of that nature, and then try to bring them more in line with our neighboring towns. We're having difficulty hiring. We still have a position out in highway department. We probably will have a position out in the parks department relatively soon. We feel that there'll be a retirement there. And we were getting a number of recruits now where it's less and less, right? Because we're having to compete with the outside world, and not having a pension hurts, right? That hurts. Our other benefits are excellent, but not having a pension definitely hurts and doesn't allow someone to move. They necessarily won't move department to department. They won't move from, say Wilton's DPW to our DPW if they're going to lose their pension one and come to another. So those are things. So we need to make sure that our salary lines are commensurate with other DPWs around the neighborhood.
So to Josh's point, this is a living document and we're going to be seeing some
living document.
changes over the next
Absolutely.
couple
I
of
would
weeks.
expect
We
it,
don't
yeah.
drop in the management level increases until the end. So that number won't change, but you always got to be aware of it.
That won't drive our number very high.
No.
To be
Okay.
perfectly honest with you. At 25,000, it's a quarter point. I wouldn't even see it being it might be that. It might be probably 1/8 of a point at that
Okay.
point in time. The larger drivers are what you see herein. Any question on engineering? The next is town buildings. Okay, thank you.
Why is this line so weird?
It's as we've added things. Bill took over in somewhere in the 10 range, I think.
It used to be allocated to the different departments.
It was allocated to different departments and then it
Became a
got brought
department,
in, yeah, and it got centralized. So cleaning got centralized, alarms got centralized, all the things that we should be bidding out on an overall basis got centralized into one. So we have a centralized office,
Right.
Supplies line. We have our fire alarms.
That's
are taken
21%.
this year, but Josh just handed me a better number, which is 16.5%. We there was-
Numbers are in motion.
It is a living document.
Why is that?
what we had there was like
We rolled in the town hall annex
Right.
into it, and the way that it got rolled in was funky, and so.
Okay.
it got
exactly.
corrected to that.
During our discussions, you had said you didn't want the town hall annex. There's no reason to have it out there anymore. Let's
Right.
roll it in. That was a $40,000 change. It was actually allocated twice.
Right.
So you
Okay.
look at the allocation twice, you bring yourself down at $40,000, you bring yourself down to 1223, which is closer. 1220, 1,223,885 is what he
Okay.
just handed.
Good. So it's 16.5.
16.5%. Correct. The
Still double digits.
And here, what we're actually doing is we're actually normalizing the numbers. Our property cleaning, we added a couple of buildings. We added Waveney House, Vine Cottage, a couple, and then some additional cleaning that we've been doing. So the contract, not only were we underneath a new contract, but we added buildings to that as well, to that property line. And then in our outside contractors line, what you're seeing is that every year, mid-year, January, Bill comes in for a special appropriation.
Part of this is the minimum wage increase that.
Some of it is, yes. that's what was shown in our contract. It was reflected in our contract. Over the 5 years, you'll see jumps to try to make up for that. They,
Right.
you know, their initial number was low, and then their numbers coming across the board were higher to make up for the fact that the minimum wage jumped. But then also what you're seeing here is that we're trying to normalize back towards what, if we take out that special appropriation mid-year, knowing what we've been spending every year, looking at that 3-year average, that comes into play at the numbers here. So, you know, when we look at his revised budget is closer to the 1.2 million versus the 1,050, because we're coming back every year for $100,000 or more for monies, right? Just to run the department. So that really is I'm trying to normalize the number and say, this is what we've been doing this past 3 years, same history, same average. We should necessarily not be asking for a special appropriation. We should be coming to ask for the money initially and go forward from there. And then the other is an increase in utilities. We're seeing it across the board, right? So everyone's telling us exactly what.
Where's my savings from electricity and gas?
We're still working through that. You know, we will be, you know, well, they're working on gas right now out in the back to bring the gas main in. So you'll see a CHP unit coming into town hall. So then we'll see that change, you know. Same thing with the annex. We'll see a change there. We're still tracking the changes at the wastewater plant and the highway department, and John's on gas, and we're tracking John's changes now. So we're seeing exactly what that'll do, but we're only 1 year in. So before we come in and say,
Right.
hurrah, we'd like to
Right.
know exactly where we're at. That, and you know, we did market changes, right? So highway department got solar and a CHP unit and gas, right? So it was market change across the board. We got to see exactly what that's going to be.
Right.
You know, and the wastewater plant got gas, and we're hopefully going to put solar on the top of that.
That's something we knew. No, that's the advisory committee wanted to get that. You know, I think Neil Budnick asked that we try to roll that all up to understand what the savings have been. But we really need a full year to be able to make the comparisons.
Right. We have projections, but we need.
Plus, we've had a funky year with utility, with prices for oil and gas and.
You see the savings on the police department. That was one that I had enough data on. I think we reduced their heating oil down $6,000 because we converted to gas. That was the only one I really had good data on.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not reflected in there. I can't take credit for that.
Why is that? It
Police
reflects
is on their own. Police is
only police?
Yeah.
Only police.
No.
Like everybody has their own
Yeah.
fuel energy. Any building has
Right,
their own
right.
energy project. The ones that are town buildings are more ones that are under our umbrella ratings.
Gotcha. Okay. Is that clear?
I just asked about your voice data.
There's a problem there.
Okay.
So that got corrected to 2,200.
Right. Yeah. I pointed that out to Josh this morning. That was.
That's where the town hall annex got rolled in a second.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so it's the same as basically for prior year, 2,200, is that what you said?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
So theoretically, if I take the 40,000 off of the town hall annex again, because it's rolled into it, because it's not on their side was a zero, Bill's budget would look even better. Right? Okay. I'd be at 198 at that point in time. That'd be
Work in progress. Okay.
making progress. Yeah, or sorry, 118. The any other questions on town business?
No.
Okay, so this gives you a look at, you asked about utilities. This
Could
gives
you
a look-
revise your slides though? If, could you revise?
We will be revising.
You'll
them,
be
yeah.
right, okay.
The slides are a living document, just
Right,
like anything else.
right.
This
is hard to read.
Sorry, but basically what this tells you is that the blue is our pricing for diesel, gas, and oil, and the orange is what Connecticut's pricing was across the board. So you see, except for fiscal 15 and 16, where we had a slight glitch, we've been able to buy at better rates across the board since 12 onward. We don't have numbers for 21, 22, 23 yet. Those come out, but when they come out, we'll have those.
That's an important thing that Bill manages to.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out. So when we say utilities are going up, we
Yeah.
try to manage, we've done a very, very good job.
Yeah.
And this shows that across the board as to what we've been able to accomplish, what Bill's been able to accomplish. He works with a fuel consultant. We have an energy consultant, and we follow their recommendations. And so far, we've done quite well, as shown in these three, at least these three markers. And then electricity is very much the same. Right. We've seen a very good rate in our electrical rate over time as well, working with Jeff. Any other questions? All right. So the next is the highway department. Highway Department is a 72,748% change. The majority of it is an increase in utilities and then some in the salary line items. Yeah. Not much to be said. We try to keep that relatively flat. Almost everything is at a zero. We did increase one of our lines, which basically adds to our outside contractor line, $15,000. And that basically is to take snow out of the downtown one extra time a year, right? So we had it at $45,000. That included other things to do, but $15,000 to take the snow out of downtown, because technically we usually take it out twice a year and we only budgeted for one. So this kind of bumped that line up as well. And then there were two other lines that were slightly low because of previous years, and we brought those back up to what they had been in historically. So if they had been at $20,000, we dropped them to 15, we brought them back to 20. Because that's where they should be. Instead of us having to try to move money around it and save money here to move money there, we just, what we're spending is what we should budget for. So if that gives you an idea. And overall, as we mentioned before, the Highway Department being our largest department and we track inflation across it, we actually were less than the rate of inflation since 10, all the way across the board. So any questions on the Highway Department?
Good job.
Yeah. Transfer station, as you can see on the transfer station, we are just cresting what we were at 10 and 9, even after 13 years of work. The operating budget is 1703. It's a $60,000 change. We had a slight change in our salary lines, and then we're looking at recycling and bulky waste. Their contracts are both up for renegotiation this year as of June 30. And we're putting in what we feel would be the changes to those. What we would see is as the price changes, $20,000 in recycling and $20,000 in bulky, and then the rest is small changes here and there.
But
But
we no longer have any help with revenues coming back for,
they all have help with revenues coming back.
besides fees for the resident. I mean, from
The
the
recycling, there's nothing.
Nothing.
No, that's on the MSW. But on the MSW, we track very well. Our MSW pricing is just a little bit higher than what we're being charged to have it go out. So actually we see that all that money comes in. You don't see it on the revenue side. It's on the revenue side. Our revenue is $625,000, and that technically could come off the top of running the transfer station because it's a wash, right? We get $625,000 back for all the material we take in. We get that money back, running back out the back side, because what we charge them is what we're being charged going out, or very close to it. So you'll see that. And then we're seeing now, we have 2,350 permits as of July 17. And our numbers now are starting to come back and normalize. Our 6-year numbers from July to December for 19 were 3,000 tons, 3,075 tons. In 20, it was 3,600 tons, because that was started the beginning of COVID. For 21, it was 3,425. So we're starting to see those numbers come back down again. So that's going to actually help us as well, and see our numbers come down a little bit and come back down to what we consider to be $3,000 for 3,000 tons for a half year. We budget for 6,200 tons a year. So that gives us at 3,100 tons for the half year is very right in line with where we should be.
just occurred to me, let's not lose sight of the fact we need fee memos by next week, which not that.
We have a draft. We're good. I have them from
Yeah.
both sides. Any questions on the transfer station? Kathleen?
Just to come on the OT on salaries, what's our expectation there? It seems to be increasing. Is there?
Well, what we have is we have a staff of 3 now instead of a staff of 4. Right. So Donnie makes 4, but we had 4 men. Now we're down to 3 men. That's as of a year or 2 ago. And then we have mandatory overtime every Saturday, and then every holiday, every minor holiday. Right. So we have where they're working as well. So that comes into play, and having 3 guys, you necessarily need somebody else extra to cover. Right. So,
Okay.
Where do we stand with the building? Is the building done?
building is done except for the walkways on the outside. We're working through the walkways on the outside. We have a couple of different decisions to make as far as whether we want to do a platform around, or we want to build it hardscape with a sidewalk. And we'll take that up. We ran out of time this year with everything else that was going on in the area, with the fact that the water line froze and we had to put in a new water line in the system. We just ran out of time this year to get that done. So
We're going to cover capital today. We're going to cover capital today.
Yes, we are.
What's our timeline again for
I got 45 minutes for this and 45 for capital.
Okay,
So I don't know where I am, but yeah. Okay. I'm in New Canaan. Fantastic. Any other questions? You good?
Okay.
So parks maintenance, percentage change is 8.67%. And then again, you'll see that what we talked about, the outside contractors and the outside grass treatments, and then some of our utility lines. The outside contractors, we added $24,000 for Waveney. The grass treatments, as I mentioned, you got a 40% change in your seed, 17% change in your fertilizer, and about a 5% change in what we're considering for labor costs for that, since we outsource that. So all that rolled in, you'll see that that's the main driver for all those for those three lines. The John, was there anything else in outside contractors that I missed?
We added in midsummer for tennis courts.
Thank you. So Mead Park tennis courts, what we had was we had it budgeted right at the number, but we're adding a bonus to make sure that we can get the person in and finish. So that worked out very, very well for us last year. So we're adding that bonus to the budget. And then due to the usage, the fact that they're being quite heavily used, we added in a midsummer sprucing up, if you would call it that, whereby they'll come back in again and help regrade, do some of the additional line replacement. That's an additional cost as well. And take care of the tennis courts mid run, because of the increased usage, we're seeing it, that the actual work at the end, they're starting to deteriorate in the latter part of the season. So we like to see a mid-season run that's about $4,000 to have them come back in for the year.
It's just a question for Josh. So do those numbers tie in with what the budget book looks like? As this says it's up 4.5%.
No, this is because I go off of actual.
That's what I was
budget
going
to
to ask.
budget, right?
What was the actual, what was the
Revised number?
original
The original, my original number last year was 1925.82, and then somewhere in there the revision came in the middle, the revised number, because that takes into account salary lines that they're bumped for the year, things of that nature. So that's not included in here. So last year's raises are included in this bump here, because I go from budget to budget, not revised budget to act to budget, right? It's since 07, we went budget to budget. And then the past couple of years with Lunda, they started to do revised budget to budget, which is excellent. But all my data across the board for 18 years has been one. So I try to stay commensurate with that and not say, oh, well, we look so much better. I'd rather not, I don't have a problem arguing the point. I'd rather just, tell you the number where it is. So, budget to budget, the original number, that's what the number is. So last year's raises aren't included. And then some of the raises for this year are included in here, but they wouldn't have been if I went from the revised budget. You understand that?
Mm-hmm. Why is the inflation line only a stub period there?
That is not an inflation line. That is the library line. We just put that in there just to give you a look as to exactly how much you give to the library every year versus how much is given to the Parks Department and the amount of people that they serve. And I only had numbers back to 18 for the library. So the library is.
I'm not understanding that.
You give money to the library for $2 million. It's a recreational aspect. The library, you go in, it's a recreational portion. People go in there for part of their recreation. Parks is another part of it. So we're looking at just giving you another.
Glad I asked the question. I don't understand that at all.
It's okay. Just give you an idea of where we stand. It's been a sticking point for some of our members, so I put it in just so you would ask the question. But that's
all right.
Okay. That's where it stands. The rate of inflation is actually the blue line. The Parks has actually exceeded the rate of inflation over time. But we've added each time to him. We've added parks. We added Irwin Park. We added men for Irwin Park. There are other drivers associated with it. So you can't take the fiscal 10 number and be, oh, well, that's equal to the fiscal 23 number.
Gotcha.
Any other questions, Kathleen?
I'll
No?
talk to Josh about it.
That's fine. So the Nature Center sees the largest jump and it's all in utility lines. It's a $15,000 change. I think our numbers, our revised budget from last year, 60,000 was a little bit low based upon what we're seeing for utilities. But right now we pay for basically all three utilities for the Nature Center to run. And then the rest of it is paid for by them, maintenance thereof. So they have a maintenance guy, take care of most of the maintenance. John goes in and does other maintenance. We plow their lots. We do other things. And we take care of the buildings on the outside, not necessarily on the inside.
Why is the utility such a big factor there?
It's because it's a small budget. So if you look at just the 5% for each line, you're talking big numbers. That's all.
So
And I think that they were understated in the 22 budget, to be honest with you.
is that the fuel propane?
Fuel, propane, electricity, water. Yes.
And they have no prospect of it being on gas, so they're going to be on oil.
I think it's a stretch to get all the way up there, not without another large driver.
Hmm.
They wouldn't pull enough to warrant bringing it all the way up there.
Well, Eversource did talk about going up to the country club, that route, which they're no longer talking that, but we'll see.
Like them to concentrate where they are. Yeah. Any other questions on the nature center? The town utilities up $15,000, a 3% change. This is where we pay for our sewer fees, hydrant service, and our street lights. So we rent our street lights from Eversource. We have about 408 lights, maybe about 412 now. And then we pay for our hydrant service, which is basically paid by the size of the main, the length of the main, the age of the main, and the number of hydrants we have. So this year we actually did add a couple of hydrants here and there based upon when they go in to do a new water main. Fire marshal and the fire department, the fire chief get involved, and we find out where exactly they might want to add service or add hydrants. So we added a couple of hydrants in Mortimer and Lockwood and Brinkerhoff. And then we added a couple, we actually added one right here in front of Vine Cottage, in front of the station itself. And then so we'll pay about $300 per hydrant. And then we pay for, if they increase the main, we pay for that main size. It's a way for them to recoup their money back, because fire service line requires a larger service line, requires a larger main, where they could normally service a building with a 2-inch line. They need to bring in an 8-inch line to carry the service. So that's how they recoup their money. Any questions on?
How much more water main replacement work do they have to do?
Quite a bit. So I just got an email over the weekend from their engineering department. I had been speaking to their project development first, and I gave them what roads we'll be doing as far as repaving, and it's quite large, right? As you can imagine, because of Eversource, all the 2018 roads, we'll be doing the majority of those. So I sent those to Aquarian, as I do every year, and said, if you want to get in, get on the bus in the beginning, and then we can all go forward, and they'll pay 50% of the paving cost afterwards, which will reduce Eversource's number, which will help them, but also, you know, help the town as well, because we'll get a new service line in, and then we can repave the road once. So there's quite a bit that they're looking at as far as where they're going. Harrison being the largest one impacted, it'll get a new service line, and it's going to get a transmission line in it. That transmission line won't be until 2024, so there's no reason to pave it now and then wait for the new water main to service the population of the residences there. And then the transmission line, which is actually part of that entire line that comes from Wilton and across. I don't have it off the top of my head, I'm sorry, but there's probably a half a dozen roads at least that they're looking to put water in this year, and then probably some next year as well. They've been an excellent partner. They were our first partner back in, I'd say 2004, when we first started our paving program. This gentleman, Joe Petrozelli, came to us, and they've been an excellent partner, and we'd like to continue that partnership. So if we need to delay a road into June, July, August, so that they can get a water main in, we'll do that. And then we'll go forward from there. So yeah, so while it was Annus horribilis last year, it's going to continue again. It might not be as fresh of a cut as we would like to see. There might be a little bit more growing pains this year. That with and the increase in the cable companies, Optimum and Altice are on fire as far as bringing out additional services to residents with additional fiber throughout. So we're getting the majority of our call before you digs. I say 90% of them right now are all from the cable companies trying to compete with each other as the service increases.
They're bringing fiber underground to the house?
In certain cases, yes. In certain cases, above ground. It depends upon what they already have. So they're basically, if it's an existing conduit, they're trying to run an existing conduit and then run up on the pole if they have to run up on the pole. But so the like Old Studio Road, they want to go in and annihilate Old Studio Road. So we said, no, you can't. See, we're having to come up with a different reason because the pavement in Old Studio Road is still warm. Now, it barely got repaved. So I said, you guys picked the wrong time. We told you what we were doing. You didn't listen. Now you're after. Now we got to talk.
That's Southeast or?
That's Altice, yeah. So we have a meeting slated with them in the coming weeks to determine their schedule and where they're going to be and how they need to treat each road. They can pig a road, meaning that they can actually bore underneath the road itself and then run their line and not necessarily disturb the surface. And those are the things that we're telling them to do, especially in newer roads. The older roads that haven't been repaved yet, that are slated to be repaved, we'll let them cut the road if it's easier at that point. But,
Okay.
anything else on utilities? Tree service. We've been getting a lot of requests for tree service. So I increased all 3 lines on for $50,000 for the highway line. I think it was $25,000 for the parks line and $15,000 for the maintenance line, which could be also tree planting because that's where we plant out of, is our maintenance line. But our budget back in historically had always been $550,000. We've gone through some very low time and we're seeing that the call rate is very high. And then the request for just service in and around our parks to help with the Conservancy, the Garden Club, Beautification League, all those other members, though they're asking for increased maintenance of the existing trees that we have. So we needed to see a commensurate bump in our lines as well. And it still keeps us below where we were historically back in fiscal 10 and prior. Fiscal 10 and prior was in the $550,000 range.
So how much of that is tree plantings?
Tree plantings in the maintenance line, we could utilize it all for tree planting if we wanted to, but we're looking at somewhere on the order of about $15,000-$20,000 for tree planting.
And where we had a discussion about trees with ARPA funds. Could that replace this or
It could replace
supplement
it.
this?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a look to replant or actually do phase 2 on South Avenue. The Beautification League did phase 1. They stopped at Bank Street. They didn't go any further. So we want to do phase 2 and kind of replenish some of the street trees that have been lost and then make that entire gateway into town beautified. And then there's a look to put in some additional trees in Waveney. And then Irwin seems to be quite stacked, but we're eventually going to start losing that outside barrier of trees that we have. We're going to have to start looking at replanting the inside. So all those larger white pines are going to go at some point in time.
Tiger, does your budget take into consideration any ARPA funds?
No, it does not. No. Actually, one aspect does, because in the building line, there was money for the potting shed that is now we can nullify. So the capital line is actually $260,000
And not the sidewalks,
less.
not the sidewalks?
The sidewalks, we still have 19 other miles of sidewalk to go. And I've got, $4 million worth of backlog on new sidewalk requests. So no, I didn't reduce that line, to be honest with you. I kept it at the 300,000. It was 500,000 last year. I kept it at the 300 because that had been our standard ask. So I kept it at 300. So I did kind of take it into consideration, but it still doesn't get rid of the responsibility on the 19 miles that we have. And if I give it a 20-year lifespan, it's $250,000 a mile. So $250,000 a mile, 19 miles, 1 mile a year, $250,000 a year. I had $50,000 for general maintenance in and around the downtown for the brick sidewalks. And that's how I get to the 300, to be quite honest with you.
We've got to think about ARPA funds for both trees and sidewalks. So
That's fine.
Just go back to trees for a second.
Sure.
So this is OS, tree service, highway, parks and maintenance. So are those the trees themselves or?
No, this is actually, you saw in just what was approved at the Board of Selectmen, everything's an outside contractor.
Right.
So it's an outside contractor line.
So it's
we
their
hire-
labor and
this-
the
This is the
trees.
labor and tree removal. Yeah, the
Yeah.
labor and equipment associated with it. So that bid today at $14,000, if that was all roads, that would be taken out of the highway line.
That's on the highway line.
Right.
Okay.
And then
And
we
then
have-
the
we have-
maintenance would be.
Maintenance is tree pruning, tree planting.
Okay.
If he wants to go in and tree spade,
Okay.
open up the root structure and then inject, some nutrients into the tree, things of that nature. So all that is what we call a tree maintenance line.
So that we want to
Increase by,
increase.
right.
By
I'm,
11.
I'm,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
The service groups are we're under increased pressure from the service groups to maintain what we have, the trees that we have inside our parks, the apple trees at Irwin,
Right.
other trees that we have, you know, all the flowering cherries that are in Mead Park,
Mhm.
all of those are basically pruning items, right? So we're looking at, as we plant, we have to maintain. You know, and then there is a definite look as we beautify it, somebody's got to maintain it at the end, right? We might be able to maintain the landscaping down below, but the trees themselves that were planted, that falls underneath the tree warden.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Right? You're welcome. Anything else? All right, best line of the day. It's at 0. So this is the town hall annex. It was a $40,000 change. Basically, we rolled all the contracts that were there. It's utilities, it's service contracts, any outside contractors that we might have for there. When we first took over the building, we were asked to take a look and see exactly how much the building was costing us to run, right? Because it was a gift to us at the time. So the Board of Finance asked for that, and you can see it's around a $40,000 to $45,000 amount to run that building. But given the fact that town hall and other buildings are rolled into our general account, it was suggested that we roll it into just the buildings line. So that was the $40,000 we were talking about before. And then last, so wastewater plant. Jimmy is almost perfect with inflation. It's a $49,000 change, and we're looking at it increase in our grit removal. That's self-explanatory, and our outside sludge hauling. And those are both contractual items themselves. There's some other small ins and outs throughout, but these are our major drivers at present for the sewer department. Still probably one of the best dollars we spend as far as it goes. But then I was speaking about Mantilia this morning, and we'll come back forward with new use fees for this year, especially since we're coming out of the 3-year residential that we had already planned. And then we'll see exactly where we want to go for, say, the next 3 years on the sewer use fees. But these are, this entire budget line will be taken up elsewhere by other fees.
At the end of operating,
That's ending operating.
could we maybe take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Just for coffee or go for an hour and a half. Tuck, do you want to shut the recording off for 5 minutes, and we'll reconvene at 10:05?
That's the problem. It got taken out. So that's the.
Let's talk after and I'll edit it in.
That's fine.
Cool.
Okay, reconvening at 10:06.
Right. I would just like to bring up one point. We were talking about the Parks Department, and there was discussion about why the lines were slightly different. My number is $80,000 different than Josh's because somewhere in the mix, both our part-time individuals were removed from the budget request. And actually, one of our part-time guys, we were actually asking for him to become full-time. That was part of what the Board of Finance had suggested last year. So we brought him in half-time, found out that it was actually working very much to our advantage to have the additional staffing. So that would change. That would be a $65,000 add for his salary, and then $15,000 for the part-time for Ray Martin to continue at Waveney. So that's the $80,000 difference at present. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Capital. So our capital request last year was $9.34 million. This year, the capital request is $12.5 million. It's up $3.18 million or 34%. And I'm going to run you through each line item as we go forward. In engineering, we have our standard. Actually, last year's request was $5.688 million. That included $2 million for one bridge, for the bridge at Collins Pond. This year, the request is at 3.733. We have our standard pavement management program. That's a $2 million and then $438,000 in grants. This should mention that I don't take out that grant money as part of the, so the number is actually higher because I don't take out that grant. Say it's just a $2 million request, it's a $2.438 million request. So if you look at it, it's, you know, it would go down by $438,000 if we want to use the grants to pay off part of that amount. So you'll see on the budget sheet for capital, it says 2.438, and then it'll say $2 million bonding, $438,000 grants. I don't take that into consideration. I just go number to number. And with that said, I'll bring up a little bit of a plug for our payment management program. If you can see on the screen, this is a snapshot of our software program that we have. Street scan. We had someone come in and scan the entire roadway. We did it in 2004 and we did it again in 2019, 15 years later to see where we are. The green and the light green are excellent and good. And the good is a 70 to an 85, but I would argue that all the light green are somewhere on the order of an 80 to an 85, not in the 70 to 80 range, the 80 to 85 on its pavement condition index, its PCI. And back then we only had several roads. You look, you can see the little horseshoe down at the bottom. It looks like a pitchfork itself. That's Fieldcrest and Village, because we hadn't paid Fieldcrest and Village. Well, we already did. So anything that's orange on this board has already been repaved, and anything that's yellow in the outlying areas has been paved as well. So everything in and of itself, you're looking at one small little microcosm where Eversource Gas touched in the middle, and even those roads are rated as a good road, 70 to 85, not necessarily in a poor or a very poor road. So while I won't deny that our downtown roads need to be redone, that's 15 miles of a 125-mile network. So 110 miles of road are in excellent condition, and 15 of which, albeit, you know, a lot of the people drive, and that's because where they're going to go into the downtown area, to our schools, to our parks, they're all located around this one area. So their last thought when they get to that is they drive over a bad road. They don't take into consideration the 5 miles of good road that they got to. They consider the 500 yards or half a mile that they took to get to to get to where they were going or leaving, so to speak. So overall, our PCI hovers at around an 85. I asked Greenwich what their number was, and I told them our number, and then they said, well, we're at about an 86. We're on or about an 86. Of course, they had to be on or about an 86 because I was on or about an 85. So it stands to reason, but you know,
Where's Stanford?
Stanford's lower than us, Newark's lower than us, Darien, Richfield. We are probably, I would argue we might even be higher than Greenwich as far as it goes. But I had gotten a complaint from a new resident who came from Greenwich saying that our roads were in much worse condition than Greenwich. So I actually reached out to Jim Michael, who's their deputy commissioner, and asked him what his PCI was. We were at an 85 and change at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a good point. I mean, a lot of our high profile roads
Right.
are in disrepair because of the Aquarian and the natural gas.
But overall, you know, I don't want the program to look poorly when there's about 100 to 110 miles of excellent roads, and our PCI is at an 85, taking into consideration that 15 miles that's dragging us downward, right? So, and we only have 1 or 2 roads left that have never been touched overall in our program. So we'll be ahead of schedule at the end, even taking into consideration the disruption from Eversource Gas.
Yeah, I've been a huge proponent of PMP for 10 years. I mean, I think it's one of the smarter things we've done as a town.
I would agree. That's why we're trying to model other programs
Right.
after our sidewalks, things of that nature,
Right.
our roofs, our parking lots, things of that nature to try to stay with it. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a plug to that. And then going forward, I have $250,000 for our pavement preservation. That's our crack sealing and our localized repairs. That makes the phone stop ringing. So that actually causes the call volume to go down markedly. It's an excellent amount and an excellent program itself. This year, we're instituting something for our bridges under 20 feet. It's just a marker from the DOT. We've taken into consideration or redone every single one of our larger bridges, but we haven't done anything, or we've done small work on our smaller bridges, and we need to concentrate on that. So we have a program of $75,000 for the next 3 years to take a look at our bridges. Not that you can see it, but every single dot on that is one of our bridges or one of our culverts. Anything that's in red has already been taken care of. Anything in yellow has been taken care of, except for one down on Nursery Road down here on the bottom. That's a Nursery Road bridge. It's considered to be in yellow, so we're taking a look at it. But right now, its performance value is at a 96.6. So all of its ratings are very, very high, and there's no reason to remove it and replace it at present, even though it is 50 years old. Its sufficiency rating is at a 96 out of 100. So I can't see us moving on that yet. We have monies in our out years for it, but it just continues to stay there. So we know that it's a marker for us coming forward in the future, but right now, we don't have plans to go forward with it.
So the 75,000 that you have for,
75,000 for 3 years will take into consideration some of the bridges that aren't even listed on this program here on this, because they're smaller. They're a culvert underneath the road, or a smaller structure. It's considered under 20 feet, so that the span is 20 feet long. Anything underneath that,
right, so this says 75 for this coming budget
this
year.
coming year and for 2
and-
years.
But then in subsequent years, 250.
That's the number that I'm going to need, right? I thought it was 75, 250. Then that's basically, we have 24 of them. So I'm looking at $3,000 for engineering for each one. That gives me my $75,000 number, and then $10,000 each on a repair on average to get me to the $250,000 mark.
Which
That's
is
how we
in
budgeted.
subsequent years.
That's in a subsequent, yeah, we have to do the engineering first, and then we'll go and we'll do the actual construction itself. And then we have $300,000 for sidewalks. This is a snapshot of our 2014 POCD. Obviously, it'll be redone this year. But basically, this gives a look. All the red lines are where new sidewalks are proposed to go. We are attacking certain areas. This here is Richmond Hill. We did take into account the Grove Street and Richmond Hill intersection and the Park Street and Richmond Hill intersection already. There's one slated if it was to go up Harrison Avenue, and then this is the one that is listed from Park Street around. This listed all the way to Farm Road, but we are with ARPA funds this year. You gave us money to come forward to at least to Gower. I got the engineering proposal over the weekend. Didn't want to add it to the budget to the Board of Selectmen agenda for this week, but for next week it'll come forward for the engineering phase of that work. To then start that whole process going forward. But this gives you an idea of exactly what we're looking at. And then down here on Farm Road, we actually did this stretch on Old Norwalk Road. That's complete as well. And then you just gave us monies for Lakeview Avenue for this engineering for this phase here. And Millport has sidewalk, but it needs to be redone. And that's part of our paving program for this year, is to look to come into Millport and take care of it. I asked the Aquarian if they have any plans for that area. Originally, the transmission line was going to go through there. Now it's not. So now we can come forward and try to do Millport, as long as Aquarian doesn't have any more plans in that area.
What's the red line on the 2 o'clock?
That one,
Yeah.
that's up Silvermine up 106. That's part of the PUs. I don't know if that will ever transpire. I don't know if it serves as much, and I haven't gotten much requests to come up 106 down. It's basically Silvermine Road into East Avenue, that stretch. It's on the outside of where East School is. I think it was to try to service some of the kids that were going to walk to East School, to try to then give you 2 ways to get to East School via sidewalk. The majority of the
Nobody
residential is to the north from there.
Nobody walks over there.
Well, that's I haven't gotten a request for that area. That's just part from the POCD, but I haven't received a request from that area as far as the sidewalk goes. So then to get back to the rest of our program itself, I have $300,000 for parking lots, $100,000 for drainage improvements. It's actually 50 and 50. It's $50,000 for a survey, 3-year survey of what we exactly have, so that we can manage it better. That's also part of our MS4 requirement with the DEP. Our permit requires that we have a survey of our drainage system. So we have 50 for hardscape and 50 for engineering. 50,000 for guide rail replacement. That times out in the next couple of years. Signage replacement at 25,000. Then we have our second phase of our camera and security upgrade. Deputy Chief DeFederico mentioned that slightly. This is basically to take care of our town buildings as far as loss from liability, things of that nature. The cameras are of high quality, so during the day they can be utilized for by the police. At night, necessarily picking up due to their location or at nighttime, they might not necessarily be able to pick up a license plate for something that might happen at night, but for during the day, they're an excellent camera. Then we have $25,000 to continue our energy savings initiative. That's looking forward to putting CHP at Lapham, possibly bringing in some additional savings, energy savings here and there through solar. And then I have $85,000 for EV vehicles and chargers, 15,000 for EV chargers and 70,000 for 2 vehicles. That's to replace the vehicles that we have in our land use in our fleet. We have 9 vehicles right now in our fleet, and we're trying to replace at least 3 this year. They're basically they're a police car. When a police car goes out of service and then goes into their admin lot and then goes out of their admin lot and comes to land use, then it comes to land use at that point in time. They're old and they're actually causing us a lot of headaches down in our highway department from our fleet portion because they're constantly having to be repaired. So the thought is to bring us into the 21st century, get a couple of EV vehicles, we'll stage them, and the thought is to stage them at Locust, put in a charger at Locust and put in a charger here at the Town Hall Annex to charge those back. And then there is one good vehicle coming off from the police department that we can utilize. That'll be the 3. Then we'll get rid of the 3 ones that we need to get rid of, the 3 lemons that are left. And then we'll start to work towards a changeover of the fleet. But we haven't requested a land use vehicle ever since this was taken on. And I think that it's time to give them something that they can drive where they're not concerned about driving it, and it's a safe vehicle to operate. So this will be part of a pool for inland wetlands, P&Z, health, and building to determine.
What are the parking lot improvements?
Parking lot improvements are at present, I have other lots. I have a lot at Waveney that we need to take care of. And then we're starting to get into our outside lots. Some at the highway department, everything there, the transfer station, the wastewater plant is necessarily on its last legs, is starting to fall apart. So some of those lots that are going to need to be taken care of. So that's our look. We're getting out of the municipal plan right now. I've got money slated for the Playhouse and possibly for the Park Street lot. Morse Court, I still have queued up, but it's holding. So it's an older asphalt, but it's an excellent mix and it's holding. So I don't want to take it out because there's no reason to. But it's, it at one point in time, it's going to fail. It's 50 years old. It's going to fail. It's just a matter of time. So those are the looks that we have. We have 60 plus parking lots. I can basically throw a stick at whatever one you want. We should redo the pool lot, the lot between the paddle and Waveney Pool itself. That one was done 13 years ago, and it's on its last leg, so that should be taken care of. And then possibly the pool lot itself. And then there's the western lot to Lapham Community Center that needs to be redone. The other lots crack sealed, and we're working on we micro thinned overlaid Elm Street to see exactly if the turns would kill it and tear it up, and it hasn't. So our feeling that we can actually micro thin a parking lot and not have it torn up by turning movements, because that's a terrible thing for a thin overlay, that the tires can tear it. But if it's succeeding on Elm Street, it probably will succeed in our other lots, and then we can use that to then gain us a little bit more time on those, get us another 7 to 10 years out on those lots, and concentrate on the ones that are in more dire need.
And those parking lots, that those show up as other funding? Is that, how is that by
Sure, I think
grants
that's
or?
coming from the parking
That
fund.
could come from the parking fund, but they have to actually approve that, because I don't know if they did approve it last year, so I don't even have a budget from last year's numbers. That was my concern. So yeah, that could be, we have adequate money in the parking fund to
For
fund
Locust in
parking lot.
particular, for Locust in particular.
Right, but I have $500,000 slated right now for Locust. Once we determine our final steps at Locust, then we can go forward with.
How much do we
Locust.
have in the fund?
900.
What was that?
How much do we have in the
fund?
parking fund?
I believe it's around $1 million. Sitting at around $1 million right now.
Okay, so it looks like this current budget year, we have 300,000 coming out of the parking fund, and you're proposing another 300 for next budget year.
No,
So
No.
for next,
For 2022, 23, it has 300,000 in other
Right.
coming out of the parking fund. It shows the same amount coming out of the parking fund for
right,
this
so I
year.
think that's a continuing 300,000. I don't think it necessarily means we're taking it from the parking fund for the next year. It's just that we have the money to pay for it in the parking fund.
Okay,
That has to
I'm
be-
just,
that- Yeah, that has to be voted upon. That has to be like, that allocation has to be voted upon to actually do that. Other than that, they have to find a funding source. We're proposing the funding source being the parking fund. We had done it in the past.
right. It looks like we're doing it this year and we're posing it for next year.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on? No? The next is town buildings. Town buildings request is $4,098,550. What's listed is $4,358,550, but if you take out $260,000 for the potting shed, which was already taken care of by ARPA funding, we're at $4,098,000. I have two separate numbers in here. I apologize. Right now we have the police department reconstruction, which is not included in that $4 million number at 10 million. We have Waveney House ADA upgrades at 990. This is for the bathrooms themselves. And then we'll have a subsequent request for the elevator. Lapham Community Center, the generator is now, it's unreliable, and Lapham is actually considered one of our shelters or our shelter. So we consider that a primary need. We have $400,000 for the Lapham Community Center CHP project. We have monies this year for the town hall. We had monies in the past for SACs. So this is moving forward with that. We have $200,000 for the Nature Center Audubon House. That's a renovation of that so it can actually be utilized. They want to put some programming in there for their younger children. They're seeing a great need for care in the nursery school for younger children. They have a couple of programs they'd like to bring forward for there. I have $95,000 for various buildings at the Nature Center. The majority of them are roof repairs, the visitor center, the Rock House, the Cider House, some work at the Herb Cottage and the Herb Shed. We have $100,000 at the schoolhouse. We had an engineer come out and take a look. We have a lot of spalling going on the outside of the building down by the daycare side on the support columns. You actually approved the contract to do some smaller work, some minor repair work that had to be done with 14 Escalante a couple of weeks ago. And this is to do the overall look. And then we have $1.5 million for the Playhouse, for renovations of the Playhouse, and then $100,000 for oil to gas conversions as we roll forward for Town Hall and for other areas where we see gas going. Yeah, it's about 22 separate areas of concern. If you have a question on any one of them, I can certainly answer them.
Playhouse, the $1.5 million, again, showing up in the other column. Is that because of the separate fund that we have for the Playhouse? What's the balance in that fund?
Second. I'll have to get back.
That's
to you.
fine.
About 850.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about 800.
So 850 from that fund and then the rest from bonding or
Ponding.
Or ARPA funds. See.
ARPA or check support? Okay.
Any other questions on town buildings?
So 10 million for the police,
For the first go, yeah.
just a placeholder.
Just a placeholder, yeah. We had placeholders in the past budget and then they got nullified, so we have to continue to put one out there just so it's aware, everyone's aware of it, but I didn't include it because it just spikes the numbers, makes it look out of phase.
Right.
You know, very, very hard, you know, when you're asking for $2 million a year and then all of a sudden you ask for 14, it makes it really, really difficult. So I try to take out those anomalies, so to speak. In the highway department, the request is 508,000. Last year, we received 605,000. We have $220,000 to replace dump sander. We have 13 in our fleet. This is for truck number 23. It's a 2004. It has about 57,000 miles. And by Moses' estimation, it's fought 400 snowstorms. So it's about where, so she's a little tired and I think she deserves a rest. So we'd like to put her to bed. The low boy, it's dump truck, it's $78,000. That low boy, it's 2013 with 75,000 miles. And that one is fought about 179, 180 snowstorms itself. We're replacing a loader. That loader, we have 3 loaders in our fleet. That loader has 12,000 hours in it. It's a 2009. As you get higher up in the hours, it comes to the point where you should get rid of them or put them to bed. We'd like to replace that. We have $25,000 for our equipment refurbishing. That's allowing us to keep our vehicles longer and in better shape. I think that that's one of our best programs that was instituted. And then replacement of a pavement hot box. What that does is that allows us to get a larger load of asphalt, not have to run back to the plant and wait in line for an hour and a half to get filled to come back. We can actually fill the pavement hot box, have it available for the men, and then they can continue to work while someone else might feed them instead of having to wait for the truck. It pays for itself in the amount of time saved over the course of its lifetime. I should say actually less than that. It'll pay for itself in the amount of time saved. Any other questions? Fantastic. The transfer station, we have $67,000 request. Last year was 33, and this is to replace our landfill mower. It's a specialized mower that can actually plow the slopes, the steep slopes that are there. And it's 21 years old. We got the original one when we capped the landfill, and now it's time to replace that unit itself. The Parks Department. On the equipment side, we have equipment and infrastructure. On the equipment side, the request is $381,000. The vehicle at $78,000 is to replace the lowboy, basically same mileage and same wear and tear as the highway department. $25,000 to replace the utility cart. This utility cart is used for all 4 seasons. It's used during the summer as a water truck and for other things. And then during the winter, it has a sander on it. It's actually used to salt some of our sidewalks. We have a replacement of a 72-inch mower. It's a 21-year-old unit. Replacement of a ride-on mower. A replacement of 2 trailers. Both of them are 15 years old at $14,000. The leaf box and vacuum at $21,500. That's a 20-year-old leaf box and a 12-year-old vacuum. So they've seen their life as well. And then the athletic field mower. This is what I was speaking about before. Prior, it was a $90,000 line item. Now it's at $137 because of the increase in steel and because of the diesel emissions. And this is a replacement of an existing unit and then an infield machine for $32,000. Any questions
What's
overall?
the infield machine?
Infield for baseballs, you know, it grooms the infield, rakes and grooms it. Any other questions? All right, the field improvements, it's at 2.277 million. It's up from 844,000 last year. But in that, 455,000 of it was deferred to this year because that was the playground. So last year's request was in the $1.29 million range. And then the playground itself got deferred. So we have our normal $60,000 for field improvements. That's for the baseball fields, for lips and things like that, and soccer goalie boxes. We have $100,000 for irrigation upgrade. That's for the Mead Park system. Mead Park system, I think, had 6 or 7 breaks last year alone. Some of which were underneath the parking lot, which caused us problems because that's a larger repair at that point in time to have to repair the parking lot as well. We have $220,000 to rebuild the clay tennis courts at Mead Park. We had originally had this money, and then it was brought over to actually install pickleball courts on one of our courts that were there, the all play surface. Now we're looking at, it's been a couple of years since, we still need to rebuild the clay tennis courts, and we have $220,000 there. That could be done in stages. It won't be 110 and 110. We could do half and half, but it'll be, you know, there won't be a cost savings. There's a cost saving to do it all. If we did half and half, we could do 4 courts this year and 4 courts next year, which will allow them to play through that time frame while they're being redone. That is a consideration. We have $450,000 for the Dunning Stadium lights. That's to replace the towers and make the lamps LED. So there'll be a savings in our electrical system right there. Right now, we pay about $23,000 on electricity just to light the lights. So we'll see a savings once we change over to LED. These are the original units for the stadium themselves. Some of the poles are leaning, and we feel that it's time to replace the units. The wind loading has changed on everything, all the requirements. And the guidance has changed, the engineering has changed over time, so the loads themselves are changed, and these don't necessarily meet the current standard. We have our $50,000 for the exterior wall repair at Waveney. You just approved something for Greg Falachi for $40,000 a couple of weeks ago. This is for both the brick and the stone, so we'll look to do some additional work there. The $55,000 for the Mead Park tennis court lights, that came from the Recreation Department. That's to redo the tennis court lights at 2 of the courts there. Then we have our $50,000 for backstop and fence replacement. That's for various fences throughout every single park. And then we have our large 3, which is Bristow Bird Sanctuary at $112,000. That's for phase 3 of their work. $300,000 for the Athletic Foundation for future projects. We did the exact same last year with them. They have some work that they're going to be doing at the stadium coming forward. That'll tie in. It'll be actually a very, very nice project. And then we have $250,000 for the Conservancy in fitting with their 5-year master plan that they've rolled out now.
Will I stop you there for a second?
Sure.
What's our plan for bringing in the Conservancy, the Athletic Foundation, and the
Well, they're presenting to the town council Wednesday night, and then to hear, I would think that they would be here during the general government section possibly. You don't have them specifically scheduled in.
Yeah, normally they sit in with this. I didn't reach out to them at the time, but it also added 15, 20 minutes, half an hour at times to our already lengthy presentation. So
or we could either have them come in, or you could watch the Parks and Rec or the Board of Finance presentations or the Town Council Wednesday.
Town council, the Waverly Park Conservancy will have updated numbers and presentation for Wednesday night.
So I'm not sure we ought to have them do the show
I
again.
read the materials already for the town council, so I can
Yeah,
watch it.
I watched the video, right?
Yeah.
I watched the Park and Rec presentation. So you want to bring them in, or do you want to? Okay. And also the powerhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
All 3 are presenting Wednesday night.
Well, I met with them last month. Took a tour
But their plan changed,
again.
depending on which plan you're watching.
This was a month ago.
request changed, yes.
Changed again.
Plan didn't change, the request changed.
So that's on Wednesday for the town council meeting?
Town council tomorrow night, yeah.
And Powerhouse is gonna be part of that too.
Powerhouse.
Yeah, Powerhouse
town
presenting.
players and
Good.
Waverly Park are all-
Yeah.
Conservancy are all tomorrow night.
Okay.
I suggest you either watch it or watch the replay. And we won't necessarily have to, unless you want to ask specific questions to them. So,
Can I just ask about the lights for the tennis courts at Mead Park? Are they the same courts we're talking about, the clay courts that we're looking to?
Yes,
Is that a project that you work on together, or?
will not be. No, 2
Okay.
separate contractors, and then the conduit doesn't run under, the conduit runs along the fence line. So it's 2 separate projects.
But you'd want, if you were splitting it 8 courts.
I
say,
would do them at the same time.
You do it at the same time?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Yeah, if that was your question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, we would, those courts, when we pulled them down to redo the surface, we would do the lights at that time.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions on infrastructure? The nature center, we bring them out, all these requests are inside the buildings, but we bring it out just so everyone's aware. Again, the Audubon house, 200,000, they need a roof replacement at the visitor center, painting and general repairs at the Herb Cottage, $5,000 for roof repair at the Cider House, and $20,000 for roof replacement at the Rock House. So last year's request overall was $46,000, 2 separate furnaces or boilers, $23,000 each. Now we're looking to take in some of the additional work on in just keeping the roofs themselves. And our responsibility is the outside of the building, trying to do just that. Any questions? The last is the wastewater treatment facility. It's a $1.197 million request, up from 308 from last year. The request prior was an $800,000 request 2 years ago. So in essence, what this is we've given the fact that our UV system is 20+ years old, right? It's as old as the plant is. And given supply line problems and our look at the fact that prices are just increasing, we were originally looking at just coming in to do the engineering. And then when we went to the engineer and said, will the engineering take a year to do, or how long will it be? And he gave us a 4 months time frame to do the engineering, whereby we could actually get into procurement and then do the replacement itself and try to stave off some of what we're seeing out there as far as parts increasing and overall replacements increasing. So try to stave off that number. Whereas if we waited an entire year to go, one, we'd have worry about the plant, the unit itself, but two, we'd have worry about the fact that the cost would just, we're looking at would just increase, and there was no reason to hold. So at that point in time, we combined it into a 1 year. So this is an engineering and actual replacement itself. We have $168,000 to replace the generator fuel tank. That was an original unit. It's underground and we need to bring it above ground, right? So it's an underground storage tank that now they're asking for everything to be above ground. The control building fuel tank at $18,000. We're on gas now. There's no reason for us to have that tank underground. So we're going to be removing that itself. And then we have our $80,000 for our other clarifier. Last year, we had $80,000 for clarifier 1. We have $80,000 for clarifier 2 to replace and rehab that unit itself. And then we have $60,000 for the original fence line that runs between us and the cemetery. If we can, we've been repairing it every windstorm. We gauged how bad the wind was on how many panels fall. And we're at the point now where we need to replace the entire structure itself. We can't tie them together anymore. So this whole 1.197, there's an asterisk next to it because that'll all be taken out of the sewer maintenance reserve fund, whereby we have ample funds that we've been gathering over time. Our septage fees roll into there. Any leftover funds from the overall operating of the plant run into there, and there's adequate funding in there. And that's the whole reason why we developed it in the first place, was to be able to take care of all these capital needs without having to see it actually run back towards the user.
Was the UV replacement in the capital projections last year for this year, or?
No, it was years out.
Yeah, it was for years out, but we're getting very concerned with being able to get the equipment, to be honest with you.
Right.
We have now limited supply as to parts to replace. I have parts to replace.
Yeah.
It's not.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had in the out years, and now we're getting concerned with it, and we're bringing it forward.
So, okay.
And all I did was that reserve fund to push everything out as far as we can. And I was comfortable with the equipment, but now that we're not going to be able to get the supplies that we need, we have to move forward and replace them.
Got it. Yep. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, big picture, excuse me, inflation's just gonna continue to roar. So
Right.
where we pushed things out in the past,
We
think
have,
there's more of a-
yeah, and then we've had to wear them too. So,
Yeah.
that makes it hard too, that we get that wave. And the past couple of years has actually been quite nice because we haven't created that wave. We've been able to, whatever we've asked for, in essence, we've received, which has been excellent. And so we don't have that, and we'd rather not get back into that where we have to
right.
push.
And I know this isn't bonded because we got reserves for
This,
it, but
right,
to the
right.
extent we're bonding stuff,
Right.
same thing,
exactly.
cost is gonna go up. Right.
So I don't know if there were any other questions. 10:41, Kevin, I did pretty good. I was supposed to be out here at 10:45. I think I did pretty good. The numbers aren't great. These are the numbers where we stand right now. But as always, we thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiger. Great job. Thank you all you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Is there another storm coming?
Yeah, this is another storm. Yeah, this was a 3 call out weekend. This was not a good weekend.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King is a bad day. Every holiday, 20 years, always a call out on Martin Luther King.
It's kind of the low point of the winter.
Exactly. It is. It's right at the apex.
Coldest.
And hopefully we're right out.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What's on the agenda?
So what is the change in the powerhouse there?
Hi there. Good morning. How are you?
So that's crazy. Then they went back to say 250 funds and now they want.
Nancy Upton and Alec, remember, this is Ann Kelly Lenz, our new CFO.
I'm president, Alec is treasurer.
Thank you.
Hello. Happy New Year. Good to see you all. How much time do we have allocated to EMS?
Yes, EMS and OEM.
2 minutes.
Much as they need.
Russ on?
Yes,
You have,
Where's Russ?
well, he's on virtually. You guys can go first. And then I'll jump in.
Russ is here.
there he is.
Oh, there he is. Aha.
Yeah, we both combine in 15 minutes. Let you ask anything you want.
Oh, go ahead. Make the.
Okay, so essentially what we take is last year's budget. We look at the largest cost, which is the paramedic contract with Norwalk Hospital. That's a fixed year, 5-year, fixed payment, 5-year plan. We're still in the 5 years, so that was steady. Just carry that number forward. The very bottom, the CMED contract, I think you call it information services. That's our dispatch and a required state oversight of all ambulance activity. That fee went up about 3% from the CMED organization. So that was a given. The only other number we plug in there is what you call the contribution. And that is your contribution to our operation that covers ambulance supplies and our ambulance maintenance to a portion. It's not 100%. And we just kept that flat. We didn't, there had been a bump up because of the huge inventory for PPE. And we've acquired a lot of equipment and it's still working. We have a UV cleaner. We have an aeroclave that cleans the ambulance core, which we used this morning for a COVID patient. So we're not acquiring too much more right now. We've got a good stockpile. So we left that flat. And then all the other numbers on the spreadsheet are in support of our building, our headquarters, that we really don't control. So that is provided by those services in town.
Town actually provides those numbers.
Too, right. But, well, the service does. So IT or Bill Spin or whoever.
Nancy, you may have already said this. The emergency equipment for 13,000. Is that on your line item? No. I'm under emergency management, emergency equipment, 13,000. Josh, am I
Well,
looking at the right
this
thing?
is this only for ambulance corps?
This is just ambulance.
It's only ambulance.
Okay, what page is that then? I'm
That
on
is page 11,
11. I'm on 14. Okay.
13.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at emergency management. Okay.
Got it. So we essentially provide you 3 numbers each year.
Yep.
And one went up slightly, one is flat, and one is flat.
It's good. Can't argue.
Small numbers, sorry.
I'm good with this.
And then on the capital plan, we are receiving this year the new fly car. It's in the works now. We just got the invoice from Carl Chevrolet, and we are not requesting anything for the next year. So our 5-year out doesn't show anything for next year. And then in the future is a new ambulance, which we get every 9 years, and there are 3 of them. So every 3 years, there's a new one coming in. But in the future, the budget we're talking about now, we're not looking at anything on the capital plan.
Nancy, what are the education incentives?
You mean, what do we offer our members?
Yeah, I mean,
Our incentive is we'll pay for any class you take, any conference you go to. So we have that in our own, on our donation side, we cover that.
only through donations. So. it's
Right,
already-
you don't contribute there. That's
Oh,
what we
okay.
raise. Yeah.
So the jump there.
So we do allow all of our members to go to conferences, take advanced training classes. We have our in-house classes, which again are funded through, say we get an instructor from Norwalk Hospital that teaches a certain class. We have monthly drills. That's all covered on our internal side.
Really? We don't provide any support from the,
We cover it. I mean, that's what our donations are for,
Right.
right?
So historically,
and it's covered. I mean, you haven't had problems being short in terms of the resources on the private side.
I mean, the internal, like what our
Yeah.
donations cover, every so often there's some big kind of splurge and, it dips, it varies. So, we have a small investment account and we can always pull from there. So if our donations don't cover a certain year, we can cover.
That's amazing. I mean,
so historically, when did you change your name to EMS?
2 years ago,
Just 2 years ago?
just 2 years ago.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
so it used to be known as the ambulance corps.
NICVAC.
Nick Vac.
So we went from
Yeah,
NICVAC
ambulance
to
corps.
New Canaan EMS.
It was, before that was the ambulance corps.
Yeah, and it's still shown in your budgets as.
That's-
It's ambulance corps.
But no, its official name was always New Canaan Volunteer Ambulance Corps.
Right, Nick Vac.
So
Right,
you use the ambulance corps part of it.
right. But I
yeah.
wonder if we shouldn't, change our documents to say EMS.
Sure.
Sure.
People-
Easy enough.
That's my point.
Okay.
Why did you change your name?
Did you ask why? Because people didn't know what NICVAC was, but they knew what EMS was.
Right.
But I mean, Wilton uses VAC also.
Right.
Wilton Volunteer Ambulance, WeVAC, and we're NICVAC.
Right.
But we said,
But we
"Oh,
got away from that name. So we,
we're just gonna,
I
yeah,
just think we have-
rebranding, it
Rebranding.
refreshes
With the
things.
yeah, but
Yeah.
just for our,
But just to remind everybody, you're still volunteers.
We are,
And that's important.
100%.
I mean, I get the branding, but just to emphasize, you guys are incredible volunteers,
Well,
probably work harder than
We
anybody
are
else in
volunteers
town on a
and
volunteer
I
basis.
mean, goodness, we just got the COVID premium pay. Thank you so much. Our members were just like, oh my God. Woof.
Great.
Yeah,
Glad that went through.
it did. Thank you so much.
Did I read? I'm trying to, this was a couple of days ago, but did I read, I mean, getting enough volunteers and so forth during the pandemic and so forth, that's been a challenge, I imagine. And
It is, but we've kind of held steady. So what's happened is we had a lot of people take a leave of absence due to their own personal health.
Yeah.
Family, they were mothers and the kids needed to be homeschooled. So we had a lot of that, but then a lot of interest in town to volunteer, to be a part of the solution. So we had a lot of people go through our EMT class and join
great.
our membership. We offer a class we try to do every year, and maybe we get 5 or 6 people out of it. And we got a lot more this past year, and we're running one in a couple weeks. So it keeps the levels up, even though we see a lot of cross out names, add names, cross off names, that it fluctuates a lot.
That's great.
We have about 50 members,
50,
50.
right.
did you also help with vaccinations? Some of your
We
people?
have quite a few. Yes, it has been going on for almost a year. We started in March. The state authorized EMTs under the emergency to vaccinate people. So we went through a Connecticut state-run training program and got certified. And there's probably 6 or so of us that work almost weekly at the vaccination clinics.
Great.
I was just reading about another town somewhere. I forget where but they had their firemen doing that, which I can't really imagine firemen giving vaccinations.
Yeah, so we're in their bunker suits and showing me a needle. It's like, I don't know, I'd rather a doctor. But we're in uniform, so, and it's, if it's not us, it's the nurses who do get paid. But I think that helps the public health quite a bit
Mhm.
to have our EMTs doing this.
Terrific. Any further questions? Thank you for all you do.
Yes.
Good to see you guys.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. And then Mr. Kimes.
There, I will be exceptionally brief because I think I only have 9 minutes. So first, thanks to everyone across all of municipal government for their partnership over what has been, unfortunately, yet another very busy year for emergency management between the pandemic continuing, the DEMIS test and mass kit distributions to the schools, our municipality, our first responders, Ida, the remnants of Ida, and the large amount of flooding our town dealt with, Hurricanes Henri, Elsa, and then all of the things that we do throughout the year, which is, things that include our public school safety plan, a partnership with the Board of Ed, the local emergency operations plan, and in particular, CERT. I got to call them out for their incredible work over the past year. It's a staggering amount of work that they've done, whether it's through test kit distributions, mask distributions, special events, vaccine clinics. They're always willing to jump in at basically no notice and provide resources. So for our budget this year, I'll start with the operating. There are a few lines that are up year over year. Our salaries, Social Security remain the same. Our on-site contractors is up, and the reason for that is Everbridge Mass Notification Pro, which is the town system that we use for callouts. We are trending higher in expenditure there. Some of that has the current year's expense is going to be allocated to the COVID lines, but we are trying to plan that, you know, the pandemic unfortunately isn't going away, and we will still be required to do notifications. And if anything has shown us that unfortunately weather-wise, it only appears to get more likely that we have severe weather instances where we might need to do it, as evidenced by the random ice storm that we had not a week or two ago. Additionally, we are taking some line items from other agencies. So we're taking the bill for the Country Club cell tower away from fire and bringing that into our budget, as well as the GIS license, which is for the town mapping tool, which allows us to do, when we have hurricanes, large events with large numbers of power lines and trees down. We have moved from the previous system, which was wonderful, that Stuart Salvini had put together using Google Maps, to a true enterprise tool, which we've done in partnership with Public Works and Tie and Bond, our GIS provider. So that's why that number's up. It's mostly subscriptions and licenses. Training remains flat. The repairs emergency equipment is up, and the reason for that is it was previously $2,000 just for preventive maintenance, which basically was fixing things like the electronic signboards or the incident command trailer. But we are supporting CERT, as CERT will be receiving EMS's previous fly car. So there's some extra funds in there to wrap the car and ensure that it has the appropriate radio so that they can do their jobs safely. Supplies is flat. That's for our Higgins ID card. Cell phones is up merely for the purpose of, voice data is up merely because of cell phones. Bill and I both have cell phones because we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the last line, which is equipment emergency, is up. The majority of that is providing some equipment to the CERT teams, such as jackets, reflective equipment, computers. And then there's also a thing called the UASI sustainment fee, which for those who may not know, is a regional statewide radio system that police, fire, and EMS have access to that is completely independent from our town system. It is used for large scale regional disasters, or we can use it in our own cases if, for example, we end up having a system failure, which did happen this year. We had a complete failure of our public safety radios on July 7th at 1 a.m., which happened to coincide, unfortunately, with a structure fire on Devonwood Lane. So Phil and I are working to partner with our first responder agencies to not only better plan for an eventuality that something like that might happen, but also to leverage that state backbone so that we have that kind of redundancy. So I'll pause there. Phil, anything on operating that I am remiss or missed?
Nope, great job.
Okay, I'll pause there. Questions?
Questions?
Great
And I'll
job.
move on to capital.
Well, before you do, we get reimbursement for the salaries line from the Region
You
1.
get a partial reimbursement based upon the head count of the town, which Phil and I have to submit on an annual basis.
You know, it ends up being about 50%, as I recall, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, capital, there are only two lines. One is the Motorola radio hardware and software update agreement. This is something that was approved last year by the Board of Selectmen. It is a 5-year contract. We're on year 2 of 5 that provides support for hardware and radio replacement and upgrades. We're on our 2nd year. We just did our first software upgrade for our infrastructure. For those who are not aware, we went into the digital age thanks to the hard work of Stuart and a number of other people. We've upgraded our town's infrastructure. So it's digital and it requires updates and upgrades to make it so that it's safe from hacking, but also is, you know, as good a system as we can have to serve our town. The other thing that provides is a replacement of hardware. The reason we went with this contract is because Motorola was unwilling or unable to provide us capital outlays for what it would cost to keep our infrastructure, what pieces of hardware would sunset and no longer work. Due to basically, think of your iPhone, it gets to a point where your software just is outpaced by the software outpaces the hardware. So this is a program for 5 years where they proactively replace equipment to ensure that we maintain operation and also don't get hit with a potential multi-million-dollar bill for having to replace a bunch of equipment and antennas 5 years later. So that's the software agreement. We're in a contract, so it's the second year. And then the only other one is the replacement incident command trailer. I do have a exceptionally brief, and I don't know if I can share my screen. Tucker, can I share my screen? It appears I can. All right, look at that. I won't go through all of this because we're extraordinarily short on time, but for those who are not aware, the town of New Canaan has an incident command trailer. It was acquired in 2007 with grant funds. It's been used during the COVID pandemic. It's been used at various fires and emergencies. It serves as our backup emergency operations center. God forbid, police department was inaccessible. I think back to the days when we had the white powder scares post 9/11. We would not be able to stand up our EOC or access the building if that was the case. So this trailer provides that kind of functionality. It also was used, as I said, during COVID as an on-site command center for Jen and her team. It also is a warming trailer. It seems that every time we need to do these sorts of things, it's below freezing. The roof is leaking, not repairable. It's exposing the radios and equipment to damage. The body is rotting. It's well past its useful life, unfortunately. The biggest problem is that the roof is leaking. I've been in discussion with Neil down on highway, and these are not things you can fix in these types of trailers. This is not an aluminum trailer. So what we're recommending is the purchase of a replacement trailer. It's 150 total cost. We're benchmarking with other towns. It would be an aluminum trailer, which would give us a much longer lifespan for it. And then ensuring that we have the appropriate gas generator, scene lighting, and also the radios and communications equipment that we would need to be able to operate at any large scale or large duration incident, or to back up the police department in case, God forbid, we were unable to use it in the event of a major event. I would have a conference room for coordination and command. And this is a very basic incident command trailer. The thought here is that you can get all sorts of crazy drones and things. That's not our intention. This should be kept very simple, and the simpler they are, the more functional they are, and the less likely to break. So that is our proposal there. Phil, anything on this?
No, you neglected to mention the ant infestation, but I think that's probably unnecessary in the existing one, yeah.
Right. And it's used by all the different departments. PD, fire, EMS, CERT uses it. Health department used it. So it is a valuable asset to the town, and it has seen its day, unfortunately.
Yeah, the other thing is, Russ did mention it's also used for a lot of public events. July 4th, for example, we use that up at Waveney, and for other events, it's available to be used. So a lot of different ways it can be used.
Questions?
Where's it stored?
It currently is stored behind the police department, but it has been spending quite a bit of time at highway getting pieces put back on it.
It's in tough shape. We need a new one.
Yeah.
Why don't we want the crazy drones?
We have a working group that we outlined our requirements, and while certainly they're interesting and potential, it's not something we think should be considered as part of this, right? I think the things that we thought that other towns have done are large extending camera poles on the top. We look at the mission profile that we're using this for, and we don't think that there's a need for that. So the most important thing for this is to have the space, the conference abilities, basically to have some monitors in a conference-like room. Everyone's bringing their own laptop with them, so you don't have to worry about updates and going into a trailer where it's got a computer that hasn't been turned on in 6 months. The telephones and the radios to be able to talk to the essential agencies. So by keeping it simple, it makes it, when we pull it out of storage after not using it for a month, everything will hopefully work, as opposed to if it's entirely overcomplicated, then you run into more problems.
Yeah, the only caveat, Kevin, I would say is as we get closer to actually speccing it out, we'll obviously talk to the towns around us and to the providers to see if there is any kind of new technology that would make sense given Russ's description there. So.
And there's always mutual aid, right? Like we can request resources for things like drones from the Fairfield County Hazmat team. The expectation, though, is, and where this trailer would get used is in large scale regional, in particular large scale regional, where everybody is, I hate to say it, municipalities are dealing with their own problems, and you're not going to be able to get mutual aid resources. So that's why we have to have one of these ourselves.
Yeah, what happened to that cow that we looked at? How much did that cost? The
Oh, no, now that is going back in my memory. I want to say it was in the 40 range, 40 or 50 in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Um,
Cell tower on wheels, which,
yeah,
Right.
because of FirstNet, they, you can buy them now.
yeah, most of the carriers provide them, and certainly something we're willing to, discuss. I certainly we're in support of it at a very minimum, to having the ability to, so for those who are not aware, it's a towed cell tower with a satellite link and its own generator. So if the entire infrastructure fails for communications, you can park this thing next to the command trailer in theory, and it will be able to allow the people in that vehicle who are on either AT&T, Verizon, or FirstNet, everybody has their own count, to be able to use their phones, regardless of the network, because it goes through a satellite connection. So something we didn't put in this year's budget, but certainly something we would be interested in exploring. The town phones are all Verizon, so I would probably lean towards Verizon, just because that's what all of the current town phones are, that they're based on. But it is a powerful tool, for sure.
Actually, Verizon did bring in one last year when we lost the, they don't have a generator over at 39 Locust where the Verizon antennas
I
are.
remember that.
And so they brought one in.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, the option is there to buy one for the town. And then, if you have a large scale incident, a large scale power outage, everybody's going to be asking for one. And how many do Verizon have? Whereas if we have one under our own control, there's certainly benefits to that.
Right. Okay, well, thank you. I think, any further questions? Thank you both. Thank you for your service. Thank you, Phil. Good to see you.
Thanks, Russ. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you.
Are we off schedule?
No, that's it, because we were gonna have recreation, but we.
Right. Okay, so we will adjourn. Yes,
You're good to adjourn.
I move we adjourn at 11:04.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay,
And
thanks.
when is recreation going to be?
We're rescheduling that.
Okay.
in the process.
Thank you.
Okay. We have an 11 o'clock?
Well, we were gonna ask if.
You want to do that later, sure.